The light never stops.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. We've already done our Pledge of Allegiance, so we call the meeting to order. And now we'll do our third item, the roll call. Mrs. Munson.
Amber Benson.
Here.
Ruth Cross.
Here.
Barbara Wilson.
Here.
Joseph Butler.
Here.
Edward Levine.
Here. So, first thing is the highway building project presentation. And we have Mr. Stephen Frischner with us tonight from Bergen. We have been working with Jim on this project for a number of months, and I think we've gotten at least some conclusions where we want to go with it. And Mr. Frischner, I'll let you have the floor.
Excellent, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the town board, residents of the town of Lansing, thank you for having me here tonight to talk about the highway department project. We are looking at options for renovation or new building to try to serve the needs of the highway department. And as the supervisor said, we've been working at this for a couple of years now to try to figure out what the needs are and what the best solution is. So I think you have this packet in what you have. I put it up on the screen just if there's anything we want to talk about, and I don't know how that gets shared about the rest of the town.
This is actually on the website also.
Okay, excellent. A lot of the materials that we're going to talk about tonight are posted to the town's website, so all of the findings and everything, all the work that we've done to date can be found there. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the project, how we got to this point, what some of the target issues were in trying to solve the problems through this project, talk about scope a little bit, and then what that means for financial impact. So, just a timeline of history here. Again, we were hired at the end of 2020. COVID has certainly, slowed down the process of us getting here, but really we want to look at a couple things. One is a conditions assessment of the existing facility. What is programming? What are their needs spatially, equipment-wise? What does the site hold? And what limitations are there as far as the infrastructure goes? So we initially started looking at 3 different sites, building options in a couple different locations. One of the sites being the current Town Barton Road site. And then moved into some of the other parts. So in March of 2021, we kind of completed our assessment of the existing facilities, found deficiencies, shared a report on that, and started into the development of some concepts. At this point, we kind of eliminated some of the other sites, and I'll show you the other 2 that we considered for infrastructure reasons, right? It would be too costly to extend water and sewer to some of these locations. So it made more sense to stick to the Town Barton Road site and then develop cost estimates. As we went through, developed those further, we worked with representatives from the town to try to evaluate those options. I'll show you a quick bit on that. And then determine what we thought was the preferred concept and why, which is the point of what we're going to talk about tonight. And then in the past year, we've been focusing on what does it mean as far as the building goes if we were to prepare the building, incrementally, and what the impacts of that are. Also to try to, have as many opportunities to inform the public as possible. We started a public information campaign that included creation of a video that kind of summarized what the highway department does and what their limitations in the current building are. We had an open house at the highway department, which was well attended event, and then Bergman had a booth at the Fireman's Carnival to just try to talk to people as they were coming in and introduce the project. So I mentioned we looked at 3 sites. One was a portion of the Lansing Residential Center. We found a fair amount of environmental site concerns there, whether it was spills that were on the DEC record or concerned with asbestos and other materials in the building. So we kind of quickly eliminated that one. And the other site adjacent to the Finger Lakes Residential Center, again, the infrastructure concerns were just too great. So we focused on the Town Barton Road site and then tried to develop concepts off of that. So we looked at ways that we might be able to reuse the existing building. We might be able to build new on the site. Maybe we could do some sort of a hybrid where it's mostly a new structure, but we incorporate the existing building. Part of the issue with all of this is the condition of the existing building, which we'll talk about. Part of the issue is disruption to operations and what the impacts of those were. But it was how could we best use this? And I guess I failed to mention again on the programming. Some of the concerns about the highway department. The building was built more than 50 years ago, replaced a two-bay garage, with the vision for 50 years into the future. And we're now 50 years into the future. At that point, trucks were smaller. There were 3,000 residents in the town of Lansing. Now there's over 10,000 residents in the town of Lansing. So as the population has increased, and there's more roads to take care of, more sewers, more water, there's just more infrastructure to manage, as well as truck sizes have just gotten bigger over time. So all of those were factors that went into what we were looking at. And I mentioned the evaluation process. I will go back into more detail on other things, but the evaluation process, we developed this matrix that allows for comparison of differing schemes for how they respond to what the impacts are going to be. The impacts might be cost, as I mentioned, disruption of operations, site earthwork moving, right? What's the quantity of that, comparing one to the other. It also allowed us to put in kind of a weighting system so that different people who are assessing the project could have different biases, things that were more important to them. If cost was most important, they could make it a heavier weight than some of the other categories. As you can see, maybe, it's very small, but in the end, all of those who had kind of filled out the matrix of comparison all kind of ended up at the same preferred concept, which is what we're going to present.
Too strong.
Any questions on that? Okay, so in looking at the existing facility, we were looking at some target issues. Those included outdated service and systems, the way the building is heated, the boiler system that's heating the common work areas, not necessarily the truck storage areas, the electrical systems that are outdated, how we would address those things in order to continue in operations for the next 50 years. Several elements in disrepair. Areas of the roof are starting to fall. There's leaking that's happening in kind of the northeast corner of the building. There's other parts that there's noticeable cracking in the floors. So those were things that we reported, and again, we can comment on those. We did a hazardous materials survey of the building to be able to assess where there were asbestos-containing materials, PCBs, other things of concern that should come out of a building that is occupied. Again, we looked at kind of some of the logistic spaces for trucks, for equipment. Is there enough room to do their tasks? Crew demographics. Currently, the break room is the locker room, is the bathroom, is the men's bathroom, is the women's bathroom, right? There's no separation of space. And given the limitations in the building, CMU walls, a very confined space, there's not really much room to renovate in that space. I mentioned roof leakage, concrete cracking, and kind of equipment breakdown. So here's some images that just kind of give examples of some of those things. One here that I want to point out is the image in the lower left, which is the maintenance area. Right now, due to the lack of space, they're actually working on trucks in the circulation space of the garage. So there's not really a dedicated space to do that work. Some of the areas where there's disrepair, there's the boiler on the right, some of the hazardous materials that were tested, cracking of the floor, some of the insufficient spaces for the programming. And then, bottom right, that's kind of the shared locker room, leads right to the break room. There's no women's room. There needs to be better conditions for the crew. So, This was kind of backwards if you go back to the timeline, right? But we had assessed the building for these things to try to determine what the cost of some of the repairs are. Realistically, what we learned early on is that renovating the building wasn't necessarily the best direction to move in. It was going to be costly. We were still going to deal with some of the issues that they deal with now. The width of the building is slightly small so that they back the trucks right up to the edge, and that center circulation spine is compromised. As I mentioned about the maintenance area, just some of those limitations, the number of vehicles that they're using right now. So when we looked at the schemes for development, they really didn't focus in on, well, what if we just renovate the building? It was, how do we meet the programmatic needs? We went back to try to assess at the end, what does it mean if we renovate the building? Replace the roof where it's falling and leaking. Replace the electrical systems, mechanical systems. So that's when we developed kind of, what is the base that will allow the highway department to keep moving forward? Because all the time spent repairing the building, taking care of some of these things is time that's not spent serving the town to, plow roads and repair water and sewer infrastructure. So that was kind of the exercise that we compared against the preferred option. Preferred option that we determined was the most successful for the long-term success of the highway department was to, on the same site, construct a new garage that would have more space for offices. We could bring the Parks Department over for their offices and share space, conference room space, and get some of their storage needs closer. We could also have a dedicated 3-bay maintenance area so that there was the ability to work on trucks away from the rest of the truck storage, vehicle storage areas. And then adequate room for equipment storage, tool storage, parts, and dedicated shops for each of the services that the highway department provides. One of the real benefits to this is that all of that construction can happen while they're in the existing facility and remain operational. So if there are any delays in construction, that wouldn't necessarily affect how they serve the town. If there were any site implications for things that had to move or change, it won't affect the current operations. Once that new building is built, then they can move over. We would take a couple of wings off of the existing building because they would be more to maintain than they would be to keep. And then just keep the basic truck garage as cold storage. When I say cold storage, that confused a lot of people at the events that we talked at.
Refrigeration.
We're putting frozen peas in here? We just mean that it's not heated. It's for things such as trailers and some of the equipment that doesn't need to be stored in a heated garage, but is better protected than outside. In this case, we would also move the salt barn over in order to make the whole site work. One other thing I would like to mention on this is that there was an agreement that was previously made for a cell phone tower to be located on the site. That agreement has been updated such that it can move to a portion of the site and work with the way that this layout would happen on the site. So that negotiation and discussion has been in process the whole time. A little bit more specific within the building, dedicated truck parking, circulation, but direct access to the office space, as well as direct access from the offices to the maintenance bays. Maintenance is here, office space, and then truck garage here with some of the dedicated shops, water, sewer, places that you can bring the truck right in, unload equipment, wash it as you need. And then an exterior wash bay, so just a covered portion where you can hose down trucks before bringing them in. After runs, get the salt off the trucks. Again, it's about long-term durability. The less we pay in maintenance, the more we have for other things. So all of that is how we perceived the next 50 years for the highway department. When we look back at the mandatory repairs concept, realistically, that is a 10 to 15 year solution before we're putting more money, investing more money into repairing the building, more maintenance. Still have issues with size and space and some of those things that we don't solve by just repairing the building. So this is just kind of an image of what it might look like on the site at the end, putting the new facility further to the east on the Town Barton Road site, taking the small office space and the pole barn portion off of the existing building, using that as it is with some minor repairs as cold storage, and that would be the new home of the Lansing Highway Department. So the last bit I want to talk about was just kind of the financial impact. So just as a straight cost for things, we've been looking at kind of what would the maximum project cost be, and this is really before going back and trying to get a little bit more detailed in the concept, so we can narrow in on what the construction cost would be, seeing if there's work that could be self-performed. Also, before really getting further into discussion about are there grant opportunities or any other funding sources. So in comparison, kind of the mandatory repairs project, 10 to 15 year lifespan would be about a $6 million project. The preferred concept that we were looking at, which is really looking forward for 50 plus years, is in the $15 million. Now, just to expand upon what that might mean, and some of this happened after we had finished putting the presentation together, what that might mean for the taxpayers. We started to put together kind of a schedule, and again, this is kind of worst case scenario if it's all $15 million is bonded. It's a scale that changes over years. The worst impact would be at the beginning, and a $15 million project would increase taxes by, say, 56 cents per $1,000. That would again reduce, so by the end of the 30-year bond, that would be down to 31 cents.
Can I interrupt for a moment? You have this already. You have it on the sheets. And you look at the column second to the farthest right, second one in, it shows what the tax impacts would be.
Oh, that's helpful.
56 cents down to 31 cents. That's based on a 2% increase of assessments. They went on an average of 8 this year, and they're looking to go up another 8 next year. So that is a very conservative number. And just imagine 31 years from now what that would mean. On a $400,000 house, 56 cents would be $224, and 31 years would be $1.24. Excuse me, $124. 31 years from now, $124, I would imagine the cost of living index would at least double once, if not twice, on that. And you were going to mention also if we went to a...
Yep. So as we were talking more about this scale that's in front of you, we discussed a little bit more of the mandatory repairs, and there is a difference in bonding between a new construction and the type of building that we would be constructing and a renovation to an existing facility. And because of the type of facility it is that we would be doing the repairs for, the length of bond is limited to 15 years. So that $6 million is actually only projected over half the duration of the preferred concept. So, in rough terms, it's essentially it's 80% of what they would be paying, what the taxpayers, the impact on the taxpayers to do the mandatory repairs and still have these issues and be back again in 10 to 15 years than to go ahead with the preferred concept.
So we're looking at 80 cents per thousand for 15 years to do the renovation part. And then you're looking right down the barrel again, 15 years later, to do another renovation project of some sort after you've spent 80 cents per thousand for the first 15 years. As opposed to going from 56, and you look on your chart, And then another set of eyes here on your
And
chart.
I'm not sure I'm not sure it's more per thousand. I think it's 80% of that 50 cents.
Well, I read here in the email it was 80 cents. Is that a typo?
I apologize if I said that. I think it comes out to roughly 80%. So if it's
Okay.
56 cents per thousand
It's 40.
for the preferred concept, we're talking in the 40-some cents per thousand for the mandatory repairs, as you were saying, with future renovation and still not meeting all the needs of the highway department in the future.
Okay, I'll change that from 80 cents to 80% then. Thank you.
I apologize.
No, you're fine. This is always good to have this up front. Okay.
Okay. Any questions?
I do. And these might be more for you, Mikey, I don't know. When we look at the sort of schema, how many bays that, we're making the bays for the trucks, how many do we have that we don't already have equipment for? Like, how many are we planning ahead for 50 years in the future when we know we're going to need more trucks or things like that? Are they all full already? Does that make sense?
We're over full right now.
Right.
The square footage in our building now is existing 10,000.
Yeah.
10,000 square feet, and the new building is what?
Well, I mean, by the time we're done with everything, it's in the 27,000 range.
Right.
But I'll give you for comparison.
Right.
The length of this portion here, that's all dedicated truck storage.
Right.
Is roughly the same length as the entire building right now.
Okay.
Which is the truck storage plus maintenance area.
Right, yeah, I guess I just want to be sure we're, as part of this, the planning ahead, that
Right.
there's space for future vehicles.
So there's about 4 to 6 vehicles.
Got it.
The other thing about the nature of the building,
Uh-huh.
doing probably a pre-engineered metal building structure,
Uh-huh.
is that these are kind of clear spans in this direction, north to south, so that you could always put some additional bays on.
Okay, so it wouldn't have to be
building onto- yeah,
redone. Okay,
I think to add to this, the other nice part is having the existing facility
Yeah.
now, taking off the cold storage wing, and adding the wing, just having it, basically barn.
Right.
So we gain a lot of storage for our paver and our grader and our rollers, things that we don't have up where we're stealing from pad at this point.
Right.
So,
yep,
definitely between the two buildings, I think there's definitely,
okay, yeah. I mean, I figured it, but, thanks.
Go ahead, Joe. Okay, I think I'm going to play with what Bronwyn's talking about, because I'm looking at this and saying, all right, we're building enough bays essentially for the trucks you're using now. Would it be significantly cheaper to add a couple more spaces for trucks at this point than to add them on later? If we're talking about a 50-year projection of how long we want to use this, should we not be adding at least a couple of truck spaces so that we have room to expand, because I'm sure you're going to at some point need an extra truck or two.
Yes, there is some, there's probably 4 trucks, 3 to 4 truck future plan into this, right? So if it's the same length right now, but have, a good portion of that is taken up in maintenance, those are not
Got it.
trucks that are inside right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm saying 15 trucks here. I think we have 14 plow trucks at the moment. 13. Okay, so there's room for a couple more right now, and that's.
And then to answer your question, absolutely, right? Construction will never be cheaper than the initial phase. To go back in and remobilize, pay a contractor to do those things, take down that end wall of the building and connect to it at a later date, will always be more expensive than if we worked that in right now.
And I'm wondering, how much more to add a couple more, just to say, we want to be sure that we're doing, is it worth adding a couple more? Is it a huge amount? Is it a minor amount? I don't know the difference to expand the building. I think it might be less than, we would want to try to do in the future.
If you give me a second,
Let me ask Mike a question. Have you increased the number of trucks over the last 20 years?
Yes.
By how many, approximately?
Oh, no, when I started, we were running 7 runs, and now we send about 13 trucks out the door, which equates to, it used to be 3 maybe 3.5 hours to do the plow run. We cut that to about 2. So it's providing better service, more efficient service. Now that, mind you, that includes a pickup truck that goes out one time, like a 3-ton dump truck too. It's not just a 10-wheeler going out. And the single axles, which also go too. But yes, we have increased trucks.
I'm getting a message that people can't hear you. Can you come to the mic?
Sure. I can't, I'm sorry, my head's kind of stuck and I can't hear how loud I'm
I guess I project well.
I did get a message that they could hear you.
All right, just to restate, so at this point, when we go out and plow, you know, we have 13 trucks going out the door, and that includes a 1-ton pickup truck and like a 3-ton dump truck servicing the smaller roads. When I first started, we had about 7 trucks going out to service the miles of road we had, plus the county roads, which roughly took probably 3 hours, just over that. Now we're down to about 2 hours. I think the service is better, we're more efficient. With that said, yes, to answer your question, we did increase trucks.
What would you say in the next 50 years would be your thoughts as to how many trucks we'd increase? I know it's a guess, but it's the best guess we've got in the room.
You know, maybe 3 to 4 more trucks, depending on how the development is coming in, you know, and it's time to get around the town, right? So maybe 3 to 4 more trucks, sure.
Okay.
Just kind of throwing some numbers off the cuff. I feel each structural bay is about 25 feet, right? And so I think if you added kind of 2 structural bays onto this, which would get you room for, you know, 2 more trucks a side or so, that's probably about $1 million.
Wow.
Okay.
So 1 structural bay for 1 truck? Is that what I'm hearing?
Roughly, I mean, there's some inefficiency to a rectangular building and parking vehicles at an angle. The efficiency comes from filling those corners in with equipment storage and materials and some of the smaller, you know, sidewalk plows or things of that nature. So, you know, you fill the space with what you have. So part of the next vehicle is already in that corner of the building right now. So roughly one vehicle per structural bay.
It is the nature of how they park them amongst ours. It is how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to put them in a diagonal. You can't get around that.
I mean, if we were to widen the building, turn 90 degrees.
It's not a parking garage. Now we're down into the, how we say, problematic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
But nothing happened the next 31 years when the debt was paid off, or if the actual cost becomes less and less, hopefully, to the taxpayers due to assessed value. Anyways, my thought is that you still have room there for 4 more trucks to expand right now.
I think we're in the 3 to 4 truck range. We could, you know, potentially move some of the things in the corner, slide down. So I think there is room within the garage. You know, this was a very conceptual plan.
Well, you also have a huge, you will have a huge cold storage building. You can jockey stuff around too if you have to.
Right.
I guess my next question is, what happens with all the solar panels that are sitting on top of some of these buildings?
So the solar panels were discussed as a way that, you know, something that we would like to take off and then reconnect at the new facility. So I don't think I have the drawing, but I do think we had that represented on one of the pages that's on the website.
Okay.
Of the work that we had carried through. That was the intent of keeping that and even potentially expanding it if there's more roof surface now.
And that roof will be strong enough to hold solar panels?
So I guess my question to Mike is this enough truck space for the next 50 years, or should we be thinking about another million?
Well, you've got room for 4 right now, 4 extra. You know, that's a tough call. I mean, they went from a 2-bay garage to a 10,000 square foot barn, in 1968, 69, which is impressive thinking. We had, I think, a tremendous committee put this together. I have faith in the committee. If the board wanted to, see fit to add another bay to it, I mean, like Steve says, now's the time to do it if you're gonna do it. I wouldn't be opposed, but it's worth more dollars, so.
But it's a balance, and I'm trying to get your feeling of, is this something we're going to come back to in 10 years, 30 years, 40 years?
You could be at 20 years in your, depending on the growth of the town and the infrastructure, it could be that, sure. I mean, everything has grown in my 20 years, from the stormwater districts to water to sewer to even miles of road. So we're growing, which is good, and it's the services that the people want which are growing. So, that's a tough question. I feel it's a tough question to just be on my shoulders.
I understand.
I think the town should spend $1 million extra at this point for another bay, but I wouldn't be opposed, but I guess I don't want it solely on my shoulders.
I'm not putting it on your shoulders, I'm trying to get a feel from you as to what you're thinking. Because you're going to be the one that's going to be using this.
Right, and beyond me, I hope. Just to touch on the solar panels, I did reach out to the company that helped us install those, just to see where we're at with those, where the life is on them. And that was honestly in the spring, and not sure what the disconnect or lag is, but I'll have to reach back out to the woman and see where we're at. She's happy to come out and do a walkthrough with us and kind of go over them, so.
How old are they?
Oh, good Lord.
10, 20?
Not 20, maybe 10, 12 years, something like that.
Okay, so they're about halfway.
So.
Any other questions for Steve?
Is this the end where your project ends, or do you have a next step?
Well, I really hope that this isn't where our project ends.
Is this the end of your contract, or?
Yes, this is the end of our current contract. After we get through any sort of bond resolution, and then moving into design phases, they've been discussed as we started the initial contract, but have not been
Any comments from you, Mike? You got a lot of skin in this game. I mean, thank you, Steve, by the way, and your team and the whole committee that went through the whole analysis and everything to do this. And Jeff Smith from Municipal Solutions were just, he had every right to be tired of me calling him all the time, but, changing here, changing there. One thing, a bit of good news, he doesn't think the interest rates will go up again quickly. And that is another thing to calculate into the bond. He thinks they're going to be stable, at least for this part. I don't know about mortgage rates and everything else, but sometimes it takes a while to trickle down to this. So that was good news, I thought. I was really good news when I was looking at 2.23, but now we're looking at 4, so here's what it is. Laos had survived the 80s when it was 22, so there you are. Anything else, Mike?
Honestly, just in closing, it's about the taxpayers. It's about providing the service that they want. It's not me demanding that I'm doing this. It's a service that they want that I'm trying to provide. And I think to Steve's point, if it goes to the bill, it's also not disrupting that service, right? So that's it.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And this is all or will be on the website as far as this presentation goes.
I believe that is already on the website.
Yep.
And then there is if you follow to the highway department portion of the website, there is the video that we talked about.
Yes.
All the rundown of documentation for what we observed, what we thought was the conditions, the cost estimates, all of those things.
Okay. Good, thank you. Next, number 5.
Can I propose just that, what if we move the privilege of the floor before the budget discussion? So if there are folks here, they don't have to wait. I imagine the budget discussion isn't super short.
I'm okay with that.
I'm good with
If
that.
that works for folks.
Okay, that's fine.
Perfect.
So, Mr. Moran,
She's a professional.
this is Michael Moran, and good evening, sir.
Good evening. 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm the secretary for the Vietnam Veterans America Chapter 377, which is Tompkins, Portland, sometime ago, some few at a time. And we wanted to come and thank the town of Lansing for allowing us for 31 years to hold the National POW MIA Recognition Day Watchfire in September at Myers Park. It's the largest veterans event in Tompkins County, especially now that the city of India has stopped that for 100 years, Veterans Day parade. But we thoroughly appreciate it. So we had 2 letters I was going to give to you so that you could give to them, but Pat Terrell will come up. Dear Beth, on behalf of Vietnam Veterans America, Finger Lakes Chapter 377, thank you and your staff for your planning, support, and follow our chapter's efforts on September 16, 2022 for the National Prisoner of War MIA Recognition Day. Lansing has hosted the VOW Watchfire at Myers for 31 years. It's a great reflection of your community's patriotism, and it also draws attention to a well-run and beautiful park. We look forward to working with you again. Signed, Gary Neighbors, President.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Well done.
Tyler Todd, young guy, works for your Parks and Recreation.
Who is it?
He's been the pallet master for the past 2
Pallet
years.
master.
With a bucket loader and moving stuff around. So we have a photograph of him with
Yeah.
and his pallet. So,
Maybe we'll put up next to the watchfire.
Say we should frame it.
dear Tyler, on behalf of Vietnam Veterans America, Finger Lakes Chapter 377, thank you for your help on September 16, 2022 for the National POW Watchfire at Myers Park in Lansing. This is the 2nd year that you've been the pallet master with your bucket loader. Your ability to build a stack of donated wood materials for the Watchfire higher and longer saved many old veterans from pallet tossing. You also jumped in to help by hand the smaller load, and when it wasn't busy with us, he was doing stuff and more smoothing out the landscape of the park. We appreciate your skills and enthusiasm and look forward to working with you again. So if you'll please present those 2.
I love it.
And to show you some of the importance of the Watchfire, which is an ancient tradition of helping the wounded and lost at home. We had the return funeral for Corporal Henderson this year.
Mhm. Yes.
That's what it's all about. And it's just like when I'm from the town of Caroline, it is a pleasure to be in a town board meeting. It's calm and feel
You may want to leave this one, but
That's why I moved it earlier.
Oh, we donated 2 POW life flags for the park.
sweet.
He made it.
So this is the first time I've used this option for board members' response. But as I always mentioned, Mr. Moran, is that one of the things that drove me to Milton Meadows was because the first 5% goes to veterans, and they get first choice. So if you can spread the word that they will be served first, that is my understanding. I've been told for people that apply over there. It's affordable. It's also market rate housing over there. So that's one thing we try to tell people, that the veterans come first, and I believe we've shown that with the apartment complex. So if you spread the word, you have my number, my email. If you have any comments or concerns, please have them reach out to me. Thank you. Okay, now let's go back. Number 5, budget discussion. So there's been some changes since our first discussion, and I sent you, you have the budget mod history for 2022. And let me just, there's a, Mary Ellen, did you put them in their packets?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a series of them, and it goes from, I think, September back to February. And these are the budget mods that we authorize on the budget as we'll do a budget mod tonight for certain things. And not to go through all of them, I'm concentrating on the A and the DA right now, because those are the ones that have the impacts to the fund balances, which have impacts, or may have impacts to the tax rate. But you go through down through here, and once again, let me just premise this is a conversation, not a criticism. This is just information. 175,000 of an increased amount we had to move over to the DA for snow removal. And if you look at the latest supervisor's report, they are down to the bone right now, and they've got 3 months left. It used to be that 75% was from January until April or May, and then there was 25% of what they used from October, November, December. So that number is going to have to be tapped in again for more from the fund balance. The other number is from the A fund, and that's 291,000. And some of that is from the marina, 50,000 times twice. Let me just premise this, that this is due to increase of materials, a lot of it, right, Pat? Same thing with Mikey. A lot of it has to do with Mother Nature testing us, but also the cost of salt, cost of fuel, amongst other things that have gone up in price significantly. And we don't know where this is going to end up. That's why I grudgingly put in the budget 20-cent increase.
Hang on, are you reading off of a page that you gave us, or are you just reading off your notes? Because I'm trying to follow you.
Well, I'm doing a summation here as far as the A and DA.
So you're summarizing this.
I'm summarizing those.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where we are. So basically between those two, you're over $460,000. Now keep in mind that when we started our fund balance this year, it was $933,000 in the cash column. And ladies, correct me if I drift on this or if I misspeak. My concern is that we need to keep our fund balance healthy. And one of the reasons I've added that 20 cents, a lot of that went into the attorney's line, because and this is once again, not a criticism towards him, but he has been asked to do a lot of different things that wasn't in the budget, or weren't in the budget. So this year, I'm asking the budget to be increased by 20 cents. And that would mean basically that we would hold it at $1.79 and see where it goes from there to protect our fund balance, because we don't know if we're going to have to tap into that again in the future, because there's a recession looming, and you can debate if it's here or not, but I don't know if Mike or Pat, are the price of materials coming down? And let's just keep in mind as we go down memory lane, 15 years ago the rate was $1.85. When it was 85%, and then it went to 100% assessed value, it still was $1.85. That was 15 years ago. And it got driven down, and that's perfectly fine by the people that were in charge at the time, but now it's creeping up. And now it'll be at, I'm hoping, at least $1.79. I'm also very hesitant to move anything else over into that with a new position, because I'd like to discuss more of that before we add any more to this. And keep in mind the 4% increase for the employees, that was agreed upon already by the Highway Association. Also, when we did the budget, that was something that Pat asked me for a 4% increase, and so did Mike. So I respected their wishes on that. I've seen the email where someone suggested we go higher than that, and quite frankly, we've never gone up to 4%. And if you go to 8%, how do you negotiate next year? Because this is a one-year deal. Next year, when you start at 8%, where do you go from there? And you're simply going to, I'm afraid, go down a very big rabbit hole, as Guy would say. I don't know if we can get ourselves out of that if we're expecting that much every year. But the Highway Association is happy with it, which is usually is the negotiating group for the whole town employees. I am comfortable with that. Mike, do you have any comments on that?
Lansing's fairly
You got, Rachel say 8% inflation, figure half of that, you've never had 4% increase. Sounds going to, maybe pay a little bit more in insurance, it's a heck of a deal for the employees, I think, but ultimately, it's
That's the other thing that we'll have to do is it went from 85 to 87.5% for the town to pick up some of their insurance on that. So we'll have to do a resolution to that if the board agrees to that. The other thing to please keep in mind that the people who pay this stuff, besides us, the taxpayers, I don't know if they got an 8% increase in their rate. So I'm very concerned about putting too much of a burden on them, and especially when we're asking them to pay for this building. We have a lot of balls in the air on this, and it's only going to get more expensive if we wait anymore for the highway department building to be built. So that's up to the board and up to the people out there if they want to contest it. There's a way to do that. If we pass the bond resolution, they can put the petition out and put it to a vote. That's all I have to say right now. And Charmaine and Marianne are also available today. And thank you for the ones who have asked in advance your questions. So, Brown, do you have any questions?
Yes. I noticed that across the board, the phone charges have gone up. Is that just because, like, charges are going up for phones? I can find a number if you need me to. Do you know?
Reimbursements?
I don't think so. Oh, heck, maybe we should go to somebody else while I find the exact line.
Okay. Andrea, do you have any questions?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's probably it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just gone up across the board? That's what I figured, just clearing up. Yep, okay, that was easy.
Any other questions?
Not at the moment, I'm sure I will.
Sounds like a trial.
None for now, Your Honor.
I almost was waiting for you to say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Are you a lawyer also, Steve?
I mean, I've had to testify too many times.
Andrea, do you have any questions?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a request.
Okay.
I do want to request that we put in $150,000 for a new position for a town administrator. And before anybody gets upset, I don't want anybody to think that this is any reflection on the current staff. Because I tell you, I have worked for a Fortune 500 company, and I see the same professionalism and knowledge with the staff, and that's across the board, department heads, their staff, and everybody. The same as I see in a Fortune 500 company. I've been very impressed with the staff. That being said, I think that we need this position to ease the burden of the already overworked staff that we currently have. I know a lot of people are putting in a lot of overtime, and there are a lot of things that, I know people do what they can, but there are a lot of things that they simply can't do because they don't have the time. And it's no reflection on their abilities, it's just they don't have the time. So I see certain things that could be provided by this new position would be maybe a public relations contact, a newsletter out to the town, packet for new board members, organizational chart for the town, and many, many other things. I'm not going to go into the list because those are issues to be discussed later. But please bear in mind that the $150,000 would include, in addition to salary and benefits, that would include the recruitment costs and training costs for a new person. And I see that the $150,000 would also provide the services of someone in place of many administrative type duties that we're currently asking our town council. And this would be at a greatly reduced rate by hiring a new person. And I do want to say that initially we would like to place this expenditure in the planning budget for now. That's up for discussion again, but funds can be moved around. Another option that we could have out there that the $150,000 could possibly be used for, maybe less, is to utilize or to engage a consulting company that would analyze how we are currently managing our town and have that study determine exactly what we would need in terms of an administrator. as well as perhaps providing some insight for each of the departments as to what could be done to maximize their current resources. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form denigrating the services that we currently have. I just feel like everybody is overworked right now, and there are a lot of things that could be done in addition to what we are currently doing that we do not have the capability of doing right now. So that's my request.
And when we were talking about the highway department just now and how we used to be a town of 3,000 and now we're a town of 10,000, sometimes I worry that we still, that we need to do more support for the staff so we can catch up with the 10,000 people that we're working with. I think that sounds like a great idea. I think it's really important.
I agree.
So let me give you, if it goes out of the planning department, that's the B fund. That means it used to be 80% of the sales tax, which we have no control over, went to the highway, 20% went to planning and code. Now, with a full-time planner, a second full-time planner, and also a part-time safety inspector on top of the code and safety inspector, on top of the full-time informational aide or secretary or whatever her title is, and that used to be 30 hours. We're down to 72%. And now you're going to, this 150,000 will take another 150,000 away from the highway department. So Mike, can you deal with a $150,000 cut in your budget? We'd have to cut back on services.
There's a good possibility. I can't make that decision tonight. Then have to look over everything.
Do we have to decrease staff?
There's a chance.
We have to lay people off?
I don't want to get into that. That's not my place. If there's, the board controls the money, if there's not enough money, sure. And I don't control the first years. No. I control the employees.
So my question is, what was the catalyst to bring this to the front? You've obviously talked to somebody about this moving forward. CJ, do you have concerns?
Yeah. Number one, I did have a conversation with Ruth earlier, and I just really want to mention that, the idea and kind of questions I had initially about responsibilities were really just to try to analyze how we can best support, all staff, our heads, and, really everyone in the town. And I find myself asking questions of, who do I go to for this, or, who acts as public information officer, and I think what I was trying to drive at was not necessarily the establishment of a new position right this very moment, which I frankly am not prepared for. I'm not prepared at this very moment to have an additional staff member because I don't actually have any physical space on which to accommodate them. So barring them sitting on my lap, hey, Scott's, a little more space. What I've had mentioned to Ruth, and we spoke earlier today on the phone about this, was considering using a portion of that money, so a smaller portion. I estimated that a firm that looks into these types of issues could do an analysis for us. I'm thinking in the range of somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 to do, to do an analysis, just from what I know about these types of firms, to understand our organizational capacity, and ask some questions about this. That said, I'm not a finance director, I'm not a human resources officer, I'm not a personnel director, but I can say that I am not prepared at this very moment to accommodate additional staff. So I want to talk more about it. I'm happy to discuss. This was not, I want to be very clear, it's not meant to be an edict. It's meant to be like a conversation about how we could improve things. And I don't mean to suggest that it has to be this position. I think it's just a one way to approach it. And again, like instead of defer to the Lord's judgment, I think we can perhaps investigate the issue further before establishing a permanent position. And I would not see a need for me to be supervising that person. I just want to be very clear.
No,
So-
I think my idea of this position would be that it would be servicing all departments, basically. There are certain aspects of every department that could utilize something like this. There are things that, I know you folks just, as a town board, we come up with ideas, we want somebody to execute them, and nobody has the time, we have to point, Pat, do you have time to do it? Mike, do you have, and it's a never-ending issue of man-hours. And like I said, I think part of this, to CJ's point, perhaps we could hire somebody to do not a feasibility, but an analysis study of how we're running things. But I just, like I put it in the plan, I said, this is nobody else's opinion other than mine, that we put in the planning just as a starting point. Obviously, a lot of the expenses would end up across the board.
I just want to say one final thing, which is when we did bring on another full-time planner, my call prior to making a formal job offer to Planner John Zeppo, who agreed to join us, was to the then Highway Superintendent, Cricket Purcell, because we share a budget.
Right.
It's very important to me that we are able to work closely and support each other and the budget needs. And so if Mikey has concerns, I echo those wholeheartedly. I can't ignore that. I want to be very clear that we are both very mindful of
So my question and thought is that I think it's like a false premise to say that hiring this person would take money away from highway, because I don't know how to do the budget shifting and figuring, but I see that we are paying Guy for stuff that is not a lawyer's job. I mean, like, you're great at it, but we're always like, hey, Guy, can you do this? But that's not, so how could we make it so that those things that we're already paying for, like, I think that a large part of what this job would end up becoming would be stuff that we're already paying for.
Well, it needs to come out of the A fund.
Right, and we need to figure
It
out
needs to come
how
out,
that would work.
because it's town-wide stuff that we're talking about.
Exactly. So I think saying, oh, well, are you ready to lay people off? I think that's kind of unfair.
Well, it's not unfair, it's realistic.
No,
because you only
but-
have so much money on the B fund.
Right, but I'm saying it shouldn't come out of the B fund. I'm saying that it should come
Well-
out of where it's actually being used. And I also think that if we look at the whole year and we say, okay, we're not ready to jump on hiring this person, then maybe we prorate and say, our goal is going to be to hire somebody in July, or like, figure out what this looks like in July. So if we were going to do the whole year, we'd need this much. Let's prorate it and set out a roadmap for the money for the year. Because, yeah, I'm not thinking, yeah, let's go out and hire somebody tomorrow. It's, let's take a step back, look at the whole year, and figure out what we might be looking to do with the money in this year. And
I would agree with that.
so whatever number that looks like, sort of like, okay, this is what the process will look like. We'll get a group together, they won't do it until then we prorate what we budget, because that's how budgeting works.
Right.
I was wondering how it affects you, Pat.
Well, obviously the A fund's my budget. I don't know how it affects me, it just depends on what that position is.
Right.
Like Ron and I had a great conversation the other day, like, I could see this being a support staff position, like, to support the departments, or the board, or other boards.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me, if it's a support staff position. As an administrator, again, they would manage 2 departments. I don't really see the need to manage the 2 departments, but that's your call, not mine. So
I'm not seeing it as a management position
Okay.
in any way, shape, or form. It's more a support administrative
Yeah,
position.
so that's, I've had a conversation with most of you over this position. To me, yes, it makes sense to hire someone to support staff, but you're going to have to figure that description out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing I think of is like the policies and procedures manual that we were so excited to work on, and then you have a full-time job. So, having somebody to work through that sort of stuff, which isn't within one department, it's townwide, it's over everybody.
So if you
Not
put it in
over,
the A
but-
fund, you raise taxes another 10 cents. So now you're at 30 cents over last year. Or, it depends where your ceiling is, unless you want to keep going. This is where we are. this conversation should have probably been done thoroughly 6 months ago and not at the budget now. Because the analysis is, just like with highway, which part goes to the DB fund, which part goes to the B fund, which part goes to the A fund, which part goes to the DA fund, which part goes to the water fund, which part goes to the sewer fund. Those are things that have to be analyzed first before we come up with a job description, whatever that job is. And from there, how we sell it to the people who are going to pay for this.
In all fairness, we did bring this up quite a few months ago, and we were discussing it, and everyone said, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and then we didn't hear back from discussions that were had with the staff.
Well,
So there was communication that was dropped there.
Ruth got an earful the other day, and the other thing is we had a department head meeting, and everyone said we don't need this person.
Right, but being that the board is the budget decision-making body, we never heard anything about that meeting.
You're hearing it now.
Well, then that might be where the gap in communication and planning happened.
You're hearing it now. You're hearing it now from Deb. You want to chime in, since you're an elected official also? And the only control that the board has, if you want to call it that, over anyone who's elected, whether it be Mike, or whether it be the judges, or anybody else who's elected, is the budget. And once that budget is passed, you are allowed to use that money as allocated.
Right.
So do you want to chime in on how you think we need a town manager or not?
I definitely don't think we need a town manager. That's like one more level of.
Right, and I don't think anybody's proposing
But that's not what's being
level. Yeah.
proposed.
We're not proposing that, then.
I don't see where it would really, I guess it's hard to make a decision based on not knowing what you think the person would even be doing. I mean, when it was posed as a manager, that's for 2 departments, and that seems like a lot of money to spend for 2 departments. I feel like if I need more help in my office, because yes, everything does not get done, I think that's pretty typical of basically every job that anybody ever has. You just never get everything done.
There's just always the rolling list, yeah.
It's kind of typical. But if there's some special project that needs to get worked on, then maybe it would be better to hire a short-term person to do that task, and then when that task is done, that person is done. Or maybe another department has, well, geez, I need to get this done, but I can't get it done, so can we get a short-term person in here to do that? I foresee it more for something like that, but it's kind of like we're all grabbing out of the sky here with nothing concrete to really know what is really needed and what would the cost really be to put something in the budget. I don't know, it seems like it's not quite the right timing, and the amount of money that was put in an email, a lot of the workers here at the town don't make that kind of money, so then to go out and hire somebody that you're going to pay a lot more money to than your current workers, it does not go over very well.
And the part of this that I see as that I would have found so useful when I started, that I think would be helpful, that it wouldn't be staff support, but would be board support, is there's all these ideas, and there's people that approach us like, oh, what if we do community solar? And I'm like, that would be great. I don't even know where to start with figuring out what that would look like, how we would approach that, and I don't even know who to ask where to start. And so rather than the calls to you, like, how do I have this happen? How do I do this? How do I do this? Having somebody who, instead of trying to figure out which staff can trace down our crazy ideas, having a person whose job is to say, like this, I think somewhere in there it says something about helping the board get a flow of work related to the comprehensive plan. So we're tied back not to just our ideas, but we're constantly tied back to this is what the town has decided the comprehensive plan is, this is what the town wants to do, and how do we How are we accountable to that? And that's another big part I see of this job, which is not specific to staff support. I think that's part of it, but I think the board needs that support too, to be functional.
So the reality is, when we formed these other committees, everyone went right to CJ with certain ideas, and she was overlooked. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Okay, all right. And so she's inundated with all these different ideas, from cryptocurrency to solar to, how many moratoriums, Guy, did we talk about?
How many years you want to go back?
Well, let's go back this last year.
Well, last year there was only, I think, 2 or 3.
Which burned through a lot of staff, burned through
Yeah.
a lot of attorneys. And what part of it is, I think you need to take a hard look at the committees and see if they can be folded into one committee, and that can be channeled. Because a lot of times what happens with these committees, though, they're advisory, and they may have good intentions, they jump on certain things, and next thing you know, we stop everything. This is why the zoning should have been done by now, amongst other things, but here we went with, and how many things did we do, Guy? I'll let you rattle them off.
What do you mean?
Well, we had to stop, and I call them the shiny objects. What were they? We had cryptocurrency we had to look into. That was a moratorium. We had to do a moratorium because the Dollar General put an application. We looked into that. What other stuff did we talk about for moratoriums or off the road? Because when you look at CJ's work plan, it's almost like there's no work plan because we went in different directions.
Right, so a position where instead of going to these, just responding to these things, but bringing it to someone and saying, can you come up with some proposals so the town board can look at them? I think that's a great solution for this.
Perhaps we should say, you come to the town board during our meeting and we'll consider it.
No, but I'm saying, if town board, I need somebody where if I have heard a good idea and I want it pursued, and I say, that would be really good for Lansing, I look at the comprehensive plan. That is what Lansing wants to do. There's no standing committee for it. I don't know how to get it started. I need someone who's a professional, who's not into the politics of anything, who can say, here are the possible procedures, here's what things would look like, bring it to the board to discuss it as a proposal. That's what I'm saying would be incredibly helpful. And that would solve a lot of this shiny object, spending tons of time chasing things.
Can I ask Guy to talk a little bit about the administrative work that you're doing for the town that's unusual that Lansing has you do?
Well, I spend a fair amount of time looking up, retrieving, and delivering and re-delivering documents. I spend a fair amount of time editing legal documents that were not drafted by legal counsel.
I don't understand what you just said. Can you re-say that?
If you want to fix your plumber, if you want to fix your plumbing, do you call your electrician? That's what I'm saying. So the town has, largely since 2015, had almost all of its local laws drafted by people other than an attorney.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean it's good or it's bad, but it does mean it's incredibly inefficient. And it does mean that you do run into problems with enforcement, needs to update and amend. Classic example, at one point the town authorized its dog control officer to enter private property and seize a dog if it was suspected that the dog was in heat and not confined. Whoever drafted that probably had never heard of the Fourth Amendment. But over my objection, the town still adopted it and approved it. So what happened? Well, no animal control officer that had actually done any DCJS training would touch that provision anywhere in the county. And the town then had to pay to fix it. So you paid to write it, you paid to review it, you paid to get the advice, you paid to ignore it, you paid to try to enforce it, then you paid to fix it, when you could have just had it written correctly in the first place. So that's incredibly inefficient. And there is a long history of doing that, and I have written that history in terms of the material local laws since 2015, almost none, including your zoning, including your employee handbook, and including your subdivision laws, have been written by an attorney. Doesn't have to be me, but somebody who knows when you're going to impose criminal enforcement as a sanction against a citizen for breaking the law. Somebody should have a reasonable understanding of what that means and how it has to be written. And you don't have to always have the attorney draft it. There are lots of other laws adopted by towns similar to Lansing that would provide a good model. And integrating it into the Lansing code might take a little effort, but you don't have to draft from scratch. But I've spent a lot of time looking at version 2, 3, 9, 10, 14, 17, and 18 of a local law that probably should not have been written in that manner from the get-go. As far as administrative tasks, I can tell you that I spend an awful lot of time just doing document management and retrieval. And there's really not that much legal skill in that. I mean, I know managing data is part and parcel of what I do, but frankly, that's part and parcel of what almost everybody does. I'm not sure on so many occasions why I receive directions to send documents to so-and-so. I'm not begrudging anyone who needs to get it done, and I'm the available person, I have access to the resources, and I can get it done efficiently. But those are not legal expenses.
Right.
If you were to take the non-legal issues that I am asked to do out of my budget, I think you'd probably see close to an immediate 30% reduction. And I don't begrudge doing that, I don't have hard feelings, but that takes a lot of my time. And then I end up having to address why my budget is over. And to be honest, folks, I don't make up tasks for myself. I'm not in charge of doing that, and I've actually gotten to the point where I've caught enough flack that I'm actually backing off and not commenting when perhaps I should. So I'm not sure where that issue is, but to me, some of this discussion is a little bit about debating whether it's a half a dozen or 6.
Exactly.
Because certainly there is money that is already being spent that could account for some of this, but certainly not all of it.
Right.
And, this discussion, I believe, first started March or April of last year. And to the extent that it came back up at budget time, that's appropriate, but having it come back up at budget time when you're looking at the preliminary budget doesn't really give you the time to flesh out what these job duties are and what this person would be doing. I just think if you're looking at something like solving this type of problem, I think you have a larger global issue you should be considering, like what is the actual organization chart and roster of the town? Are people doing jobs that actually match their job descriptions? And if there are things that need to be done that aren't in any of these job descriptions, or you don't have that expertise, then I think going slow and wisely to identify what those tasks are and find the appropriate position for it might be better. Now, unfortunately, when you use a term like town manager, it's scary. It sounds like I'm going to have another boss. But unfortunately, you are using the language that is in the New York State Code. And just to let you know, Town Law, Section 58, Town Manager, says a town may by local law establish the office of town manager, provide for his appointment, and delegate to such office such powers and duties as may be prescribed, modified, or revoked from town to town by the town board. It's just they do what you put in their job description. It doesn't make them a manager. I don't know why New York State chose that language.
Title.
Well, what it basically says is that the town manager shall be the chief administrator or officer of the town. In the next section. So, it doesn't necessarily, the 2 sections that are in the chapter on town manager don't really speak to each other well. And I think it would be more important for the town to understand what that position is versus what is the position that they need, because there are really important things that staff are called upon to do, and some of them are financially significant, and some of them carry criminal sanction if you goof it up. Prevailing wage, public works, public bidding. And these can be extremely complicated tasks. Knowing how to write an analysis under General Municipal Law 109B because you chose a lease finance as a tool to purchase something is not something that the average person just sits down and says, okay, let me write this. It's actually a rather detailed financial analysis that has like 14 different points that have to be in it under the comptroller's code. That's what they mean by administrative manager. Not that the person's going to direct people how to use a photocopier, but the person's going to be managing the administrative tasks that aren't, for lack of a better term, where the rubber meets the road. They won't be out there micromanaging how a plow truck is run, but they might be overseeing, making sure that all the procurement and financing rules are followed when you decide to buy a plow truck. But we don't know, because we don't know what those job duties are. And frankly, I think the first step is probably build an organizational chart and understand what your current town roster is. Because I don't know if there is one.
So I don't think we have the staff to do that, right? Like, I don't think we could put that on anybody right now. Does that make sense is the thing? Like, if that's going to be our first step, that we budget some money to do those first steps to get moving on this?
That's what I'm kind of asking Guy. Are you kind of going along with what CJ is saying, is we need a consultant to sit down, analyze who's doing what and what's getting missed?
I don't know whether you need a consultant. I mean, I don't think it would be that difficult to literally get a piece of paper and write the departments and draw lines and put job descriptions
We
there.
have a chart.
Okay, good.
We have a chart. I did one not very long ago. So, I mean, we
Okay,
can
good.
add to it. We have a whole organizational chart, hierarchy chart. We add to it how many people are in parks, how many
Right.
people are on highway.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think this is going to be like a never-ending story if we don't first, like Guy said, step back for a second, talk to department heads, understand what each department does, what their job descriptions are, what they currently do,
Yeah.
what they maybe do that is outside of the parameter of what they normally would do in their job descriptions.
Mhm.
Get a handle on that first, do a needs or gaps assessment.
Yes.
You could probably do that by talking to each other. And then we can go from there and say, look, we have a need.
Right.
We have a gap. Maybe it's support staff, maybe it's something else, but that's where we start. I think to throw money at the, and I know being in HR, that's the first thing that people want to do. We need more people, we need more people. That's not the first thing you need to do. The first thing you need to do is who's doing what right now? Where's the duplication of efforts?
Right.
Where can we streamline what we're doing right now?
Mhm.
Okay, maybe CJ's doing something that I'm already doing in class. Maybe somebody, Jenna's doing something that Chelsea's doing already right now. Let's first get on the same page, and then let's talk about do we need staff.
So, and my question about this is a lot, like, this is what I would go to this hypothetical person about, right? So like, I'll go to you. If we're looking at this budget for the whole year, I agree, we're not going out to hire somebody in January. Like, that doesn't make sense. We do need to do this process first. But should we budget, because we're going to start this process and we're saying, let's start this, looking, should we budget for something because we're planning on starting this process and moving towards this, or towards something, but we don't know exactly what. So this is where the reality and the budgeting kind of come up, and I defer to people who understand budgets better.
I understand what you're saying, but where in the budget? A, B, I mean, we don't know yet.
Oh, okay, so that's part of it, is if we haven't not done this whole iterative process, then we don't know where we should put it in the budget. So yes, in the bottom line budget, maybe it's fine, but how to allocate it could be one of the challenges.
I guess my question is, who has the time to do this work? To sit down and say, who's doing what, what's getting missed, what's getting duplicated, getting all that worked out. Do the department heads have time to sit down and spend doing this analysis?
I think, first of all, it's not going to be, the first thing, and the way I would understand this, and I've been through something similar to this with another company.
Mm-hmm.
We spend a lot of money on a consultant, a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
to get back answers that were helpful to a certain extent. Because the other side of that is the implementation, really.
Mm-hmm.
But to back up, the first thing to do, honestly, is really just each department head, they know what needs to be done in they know who's doing what.
Mhm.
They know where their gaps are. And to be quite honest, many times, it's the reason we can't get to things is because of, long discussions like this that take up the time that we could be doing what it is and what it is
Yeah.
doing.
Or us calling you and asking you questions. So I think as part of this, it's not just the departments that need to be part of this, but the board members too, because that's what I'm saying, is like, I think the departments are solid. Like, I want to support here and there, but like, y'all know what you're doing, and you're doing it really well. But we don't always, and we get in your way. And so that's, I wonder if starting there with what support the board needs.
Yeah.
And saying, let's start with that position. Let's start with somebody who will write a new board member handbook for new people who come on. Because when you come on, like, open meeting laws are confusing. Like, this is a whole different world that if you've been in management other places or on boards other places, this is a different beast. And to be able to talk to somebody so we're not 4 different people calling each one of you about each issue, that might be the place to start, so we get out of your way a little bit.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point I tried to make initially, is this is not directed at the departments. I think for the most part, the departments are running beautifully. I commend everybody, I really do. But this is more for things that are not really under the umbrella of any one of the departments. It's like newsletters to the community, a central...
office did that.
I'm sorry?
The supervisor's office did the newsletters when we had time.
Okay.
That's the key,
Right.
that's the key thing, when you have time.
That's where it should come from, is the supervisor's office. That's
Mhm.
Okay, but there are a lot of other things, like having a central point of contact within the town, a PR
Yeah.
position, basically. Who puts out releases to the newspapers or whatever.
So when,
A
like-
one contact for the town.
Yeah.
We're not looking at any one of you to do that. That's not under your purview. So those are the types of things that I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think it's a good conversation. But I think we already may have some tools that can help with some of those things. It doesn't our new website have the ability to, like, blast out, if somebody wants to sign up for whatever, they can sign up for a newsletter or something. I mean, not that we have a newsletter, but isn't that one of the resources that we just pay to have as a website?
Right.
That we can just utilize. In other words, we have some tools, let's learn how to use them.
Mhm.
Let's make use of them. Because then it'll take it off of our plate. It won't take us long. Put it there, somebody, a resident is interested in knowing about everything that's going on in parks. They click a thing and say, send me all the news about parks, once a month or whatever it is. And boom, it goes. It doesn't take up our time, right? So I think that's part of the conversation that we have to have. What tools do we have? Are we using them efficiently? Are the tasks being done in the right department? Make sure we're not duplicating efforts. And if I kind of feel like it's almost like, let's have a meeting about how many meetings we're having, because we're having too many meetings, right? That's kind of what I mean about the never-ending story with this. I think everybody needs to step back. Let's all figure out what we all do, where we might need help. Yes, we are always going to have things we can't get to. There's always going to be priority lists. But let's stop the roller coaster of this is priority, nope, not today. That is priority, nope, not today. Right? Because a little bit of that is always going to happen. But it feels like a roller coaster sometimes.
Right.
Anyway, my 2 cents.
So my question is, how do we move forward on this? Because I hear Guy doing a lot of administrative work that we shouldn't have Guy doing. I know that all of you work more hours than you ought to be. And I want to change that dynamic. I want to take some of the pressure off of some of you folks, because we're going to burn you out if you're working more hours than you should be. And I hear that from everybody in this room, that you work more hours than you ought to be. I hear Guy tell me over and over again, he's doing stuff at a far more expensive rate than anybody else we could hire, that could be done by somebody else. I want to move from paying Guy to do general administrative stuff. I want to give all of you a little bit more breathing room and get this town running efficiently. How do we move forward from there if we're not bringing somebody in to help fill that gap?
Well, I think it's like Marion just said, we need to assess our own departments.
Yes.
What are we doing? That's not going to take, I mean, I can make a list of what my department is doing. Everybody can do that. It's not going to take each department head very long, and then we have department head meeting, go over the list of what we're doing and see if there's duplication, or what do we think we need help with, or, gee, I don't know who to contact when I have, I don't know, ABC problem, and somebody can say, well, you need to call Mikey. And so I think there's just some communication things that need to be straightened out to know who to go to, and I think if we just kind of start with each department, figuring out what are you doing, and maybe what can't you get done, and, you know, is there somebody else that already in here that can help or not help, or, gee, am I doing the same things that somebody in CJ's office is doing? Because at one point we were doing that, we were both working on directories, and it's like, yeah, that's ridiculous, let's not do that anymore. So we took that over, and that freed up her department to, you know, have that time for something else, and so there could be more of that going on that we just don't realize that other departments are doing the same tasks.
Well, how do we get some of the stuff off of Guy's plate that shouldn't be on Guy's plate?
Start at square one and figure out, I can't.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how this process works.
And the board support, which I really think is an important part of this that's distinct from stuff that staff's already doing. I think that there's things that I would like to pursue and look into, and like, I think we could be a much more proactive board and a much more well-planned out kind of thinking through things with more support.
I mean, maybe the board needs to make a list of what you want.
Yeah.
I usually talk to the department heads.
Right, but there are things that have nothing, like that, there's no department head doing.
Okay, let me
Ed,
finish.
there are things that have nothing to do with any department head currently that maybe we'd like to look into.
Well, somebody comes to you and wants X, Y, Z, and all of a sudden you don't have the answers, and you want to go look for those answers. That's what it sounds like.
No, I want to be responsible to the comprehensive plan.
Okay. The comprehensive plan is pretty direct, what it is, so what is it that you have concern with, Ron, with the comprehensive plan?
I think it's a question of whether or not it's direct, it's how we stay sort of looking at a work plan, taking a step back and looking at the big picture, looking at the work plan, staying responsive to the comprehensive plan, so it's not just the five of us making decisions, but it's being led by the town.
Well, a comprehensive plan is a guide.
Exactly.
Snapshot. It's not the Magna Carta. It's not law. This is something that people have been fed misinformation if that's what it is. It is a guide to go through your town to basically look at what the zoning is for the future and how you guide it in certain directions. And sometimes you do nothing with the zoning if that's the way it is. Sometimes there's a tweak, which we haven't done. I understand there's angst from people because of certain things going in that they don't like, and they use that as a weapon to try to get things out. But the concept of plan is there as a guide. Now, if someone says no to somebody, what are you supposed to do? If something isn't allowed use, what are you supposed to do if they don't like it? Okay, I'm sorry you don't like it, whatever that is going in, but that is allowed. I don't know, when people say I have questions, board members can do research on their own also. I mean, when I asked Joe to look into that property, I didn't mean for him to go talk to Guy right away. I meant for him to do the research himself. Same thing when I talk to you about geothermal. Do the research yourself. If that is your passion, do the research yourself and bring it back to the board. I'll have an open mind about it and see where it goes. But all of a sudden, everyone seems to defer to Guy because unfortunately Guy is, in many ways, very good at what he does. And one of the things I've included him in the past is because in the past what happened is that nobody talked to Guy, and all of a sudden, Guy, can you put out the fire for us? And here he is, And so a lot of times I bring him in on these conversations. Why is he getting in his email? Because he needs to be on it at the start so he can be more proactive about it. So a lot of this falls on the town board also when they talk to their constituents. Well, we don't like this. I understand you don't like this. But where do you do in the future? What information do you do? And sometimes the town board members have to do the research themselves. The problem is that CJ is getting bombarded by all this stuff because unfortunately she also suffers from guy syndrome, which is she's very good at what she does. And a lot of times it's very easy to go to the source. And because she's so conscientious, like Guy is, she gets stretched. And she's trying to get her plans done. And there's nothing worse than for a planner than to have things come out of left field and be disruptive. It must be purgatory for you. I won't use the other word. For you to do this because you're trying to have a methodical plan going forward. And I have empathy for you. I'm so grateful you haven't walked out yet.
I would characterize the town as perfect.
Not today.
Speaking of CJ, she put together these were just her thoughts, these were not intended to, anyway, but there were a couple points on there that I will reiterate because I think they're important. And one is someone who can attend local, regional, state meetings regarding policies and issues that impact the town. We don't have anybody that's currently doing that. Develop liaison cooperative arrangements with other governmental bodies, that sort of thing. I'm sorry, did I step on toes?
No, I just want to address this board.
Yes.
Somebody who sat on board for 18 years. You were elected by the town. And when these issues come up, it's your job to research it. It's your job to do it. You are proposing $150,000 to the budget. It's not going to fly with some of the town people. And these guys here are your best resource. You should be talking to them, asking questions, and let them come up with some problems they have. What I'm listening here is not my job, it's somebody's job. But when I took on being a fire commissioner, I had to go to New York State class. I didn't want to, but I was told, you want to be commissioner, you got to go to. You board members go to a class?
Every year.
Okay. But I'm listening about, we want to get somebody else to do the job. It's your job. You were elected to be the town representative. And if I have a question, I should be able to come and talk to you. And you should either say to me, I don't know the answer, but I'll find out the answer. Hiring somebody to do that, I don't think you need that. I think you need to find out what these departments need. And it may turn out to be all they need is a little support. I don't think you need a town administrator or manager or whatever you want to call it. I think you need to let these guys get together, one day sit down and write something, and then you have a meeting and see where the issues are, because like Debbie said, you might find out that CJ's doing what Debbie does. There's all kinds of things out there to help you through this. I've been in the fire service for 45 years. You'd be surprised who you can call. And you don't always have to call Guy. There's agencies out there that'll help you through it. And I really think you just need to let your department managers get together and just discuss things. I would not propose this, I'm sorry, but I don't think you need it. I think you all need to work together. And it's like Ed says, somebody asks you a question, go and ask these people. They'll talk to you.
Well, there's no question, the staff is very responsive to us, and I've talked with everybody here over and over again, they all know me.
If you're trying to work on something to get pressure off Guy, you gotta find out what your problems are first before you start, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that.
Well, I see one of our problems right now is we've got Guy as a part-time administrator.
Yeah.
But you need to find out why.
Yeah, we do need to find out why, and that's why I'm asking, how do we get Guy out of that part-time administrative role that we're using him for right now and move that somewhere else. Because that's not that's an inefficient use of town resources to use Guy as a part-time administrator. And that's what I'm looking to change.
Could be one of these department heads that ended up doing it.
Why don't you use Guy the last resort? And not go to Guy first. Add as the last resort. And ask a 5-minute question. And if you don't have the answer, I've done it time and time again with these individuals. You can tell when we get our phone calls what's going on. Someone says they have a culvert problem. Mikey, there's a culvert problem. It's scheduled for tomorrow. Thank you. That's it. Or whatever. To do that. But you don't call Guy. Okay? Find another way to figure it out. And do the work that you're paid for.
I also think that having us do the work that we're paid for can also be super inefficient if we don't have somebody who knows what they're doing. This NYSERDA letter, it took me a ridiculous amount of time to get sorted because I was going between this person and that person and figuring things out, whereas someone who knew what they were doing and had the experience could do it in 5 minutes.
And the next letter you write, you'll be better at it.
Right, but that's a super inefficient way to run town government. That's
Well,
just
not, but
incredibly
super efficient is
inefficient.
when you hire it out to somebody else, when you should do it yourself, and it was a fine letter. I mean, there are a lot of these things that we agonize over, that we go through.
It wasn't
But-
agonizing, it was just a learning curve that doesn't,
That's how you learn. That's how you learn.
okay. I think that what I'm hearing is that we don't know what this would look like yet, but it brings me back to the reason and the question about it being part of the budget discussion, not its own discussion, is something needs to be done. We know that. Is there something that we should put in the budget as a placeholder for that something that we don't know what it is? Because this is a budget discussion. It's not a discussion about this theoretical position. It doesn't make sense to have that here and now. So what, if anything, should we put in the budget because we're budgeting for the year, and it would be better to do that thoughtfully?
Andrea, what do you think? You've been very quiet.
Sorry. No, I happen to agree that the department heads are the ones, plus Debbie, well, plus Guy, anyway. They all know what they're doing, and they know if they're overloaded or they're not, but it would be nice if they talked together, like it was said, to find out if they're overlapping, if they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, and who's supposed to really do it. So I would like them to do that, even though I don't want to burden them some more, but it seems like they do talk amongst each other, and they talk to you.
Every day.
Every
I
day.
don't think that would be that big an additional task for any of us to do.
To add that, it wouldn't be a huge thing.
We all know what we do, it's not going to take us that
Yeah.
long to write it down.
If it means making a list, then, yeah, that's a good idea. Put it down on paper. Then we know. And we know also if they're overburdened with something that they shouldn't even be doing.
It's always good now and then to reevaluate your department.
Sure.
Because things grow.
Yeah.
All the things you do now that you didn't do maybe when you first started because you've grown. To see where, it's almost like you do your mini comprehensive plans. What it is, to see where your own department's going. You know, I would be open-minded where this goes. I just am very, 20 cents already is going up. And when we talked about this before, we talked about a full-time planner, what was the result? It happened. It's the timing. Especially with a recession right now, we don't know if these prices are even going to go up anymore. And I'm trying to defend the fund balance. Because you looked at the calculations, we're going to be at about 200,000 maybe. And that's, once again, these are estimates, okay? These are estimates. But I would stretch this out, let them talk, come back with an action plan, and maybe put it in next year's budget. Or if our fund balance is healthier than we think, we may look to maybe part-time, here, there, wherever, or wherever that the angst is. But first to determine where the angst are, nothing personal, Guy, but we're not talking to you for a while, unless we actually and go from there, because we're at a reset right now. And recessions do that to you. And we all hunker down. It's not a bad idea, not a good idea, it's an idea to float around, but the devil's in the details how you implement it, what's the impact to the taxpayers on this. I understand we're 5% of the budget and everything, but this is going to be a big hit for them, even though we're 5%. And we're still looking at the highway department building, which that's illuminated. I would propose we start the conversations again with the different departments as they go through their list of things to do, when they have time on that, and see maybe after 3 months where we are. Because the fact of the matter is, in 3 months' time, we're going to have a little better idea where we are with our fund balances too. We can put money over if we have it there. But if we don't have it there, but we already put it in the budget, we're locked in. We have flexibility there. Now, mortgage tax came in about 80 grand more than what we anticipated. Hooray, hooray.
Where's that go, A or B?
That goes in A.
Thank you.
That's town-wide.
Yep.
The village has their own mortgage tax, okay? But then again, we did 275 again this year when it was 250. And one year was 529. That's when we put a lot of those in the reserves that year. But another year was 216. And you talk to people right now with interest rates going up, there is no, when you talk to realtors, there is no product out there now. Or if the product is, it's going to be expensive if it's out there. But there's not going to be, in my opinion, a lot of mortgage tax left over. That 80 grand may be there for something else. Let's see where this all falls out. We'll have a much better idea in February when we get our sales tax back and everything else. I'm not postponing on doing anything, but I think the department heads need to have a chance to show respect to them, see where are your angst here. I mean, Debbie, we have 2.5 people there, right? We have another person who is in the code office now. We have these little pulses here. I understand that, but we see where we are proactively. Let the department heads come back with where their needs are, and then we'll discuss it then. I just think it's premature to put another 10 cents on the budget now. And when this word gets out, people are going to be upset.
So let me ask the department heads, all of you individually, when can you come back to us realistically with kind of this analysis so we can start working on this
Figuring out
discussion?
what we
Because I
got.
don't want to have this happen again in which you all discuss it and then none of the town board hears about it. And I think
Did
that,
anyone from the town board ever ask us about it? After we I mean, we said we talked about it at a department head meeting, and
Well,
I agree, we didn't get back to anybody, but did anyone from the town board ever come to any of the department heads and say, hey, did you have a chance to talk about that yet?
Nor was there anything that said, after you guys discussed it, we need to come back, and, I mean, it didn't even cross my mind, to be honest, that I thought it was left to the department heads to discuss and decide. I didn't realize it was going to do that, maybe that was his case, but.
well, I just want to make sure that communication doesn't make the mistake again. And so I'm saying, when can we hear from you? Because I don't want to give you a date, but I want to, hear from each of you. When can you get back to us and tell us what your analysis looked like so we can start understanding where the gaps might be and how we can move things in a better way?
From my perspective,
Each one of you's got a different perspective, so.
well, I'd say in 2023, it's not going to happen this year. I need to get through, it depends on a few things. If we end up having a townwide vote, I won't be able to concentrate
right,
anything until we get
right.
through the townwide.
That makes total sense.
If we don't have a townwide vote, April probably, by the time I get through tax season.
We can ask them periodically also at board meetings.
Yeah, I just want to get an idea.
But once again, they have other stuff to do. I'm not minimizing this, but I'm also working within their work frame, having known what it is because I've educated myself. And it's out on the back of their minds. And when they have the other fires put out, they'll work on this one. It's not like they're disrespecting anybody here. And I'm sure the wheels are turning already on the different department heads now as far as where their needs are. And let's throw it out there. But I think we have some time, especially as now we've all lost Guy's number, we have time to go through and say, okay, there's been many times I've asked them, are you okay? Are you okay? What do you need, right? And you come back to us. Like Mikey's one person down right now. And hopefully that'll be rectified soon, amongst other things. And you've seen how he's communicated, so has Pat, when they ask for budget mods. They're very proactive about this, and they're very respectful. But it's up to the board members also to reach out to them with a brief call, or maybe before the meeting here, how you doing with this? Just to tap in. And for them, it's going to be, I would assume, I'm not going to speak for them, a different schedule for each one of them.
Well, that's why I'm going around and asking. So Mikey, what timeline would work for you? I know you're about to go into plowing season and stuff that really is unpredictable.
Maybe sometime in December.
Okay, yeah. I'm not holding you to a date, I'm just, you were longer than I expected, and I understand that, and, you're shorter than I expected. Pat, how long do you think it would take you roughly?
I mean, I can realistically get back to you before the next board meeting, probably.
Okay.
I mean,
Your rec program,
I
yes.
off the top of my head already, so I can do fairly quickly with several things.
Okay. CJ?
So you're just looking for function?
Yeah, what's in your department that's working, what's in your department that doesn't feel like it really belongs? That kind of analysis.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I can provide that fairly readily. Department heads made the first stupid one, so I can pass some ideas off each other as well. So, yeah, I think it would be reasonable to have some feedback at the December 21st meeting. I would say, albeit with a huge asterisk to say, that's presuming everything with the zoning that we have yet to talk about.
Yep.
Of course goes, absolutely perfect to a T in terms of its execution.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
So we can add
Notoriously easy.
We can add these on the agenda every month when we have our department head meetings. It's just a general question, where we are with this.
And we can kind of riff on this list, that's kind of
Yeah.
this list as well, and kind of, understand who's doing it. Maybe it's as simple as something needs to be contracted out, and then to answer your question, yes, by the end of the year, I should be able to provide some.
Okay. Mary Ellen?
I would say the end of the year too. And
Okay.
honestly, I mean, just start with a high-level overview, kind of just to start, certainly by the end of the year. If you want something more detailed, I agree with that. It's going to probably be more ends in 2023.
Yeah.
But a high-level overview, sure.
Okay, well, let's get this process started, and I would like to hear back as a board what's going on, because this is a concern, and this is, we need to make sure this is working for everybody. And I know you guys work together well, but I also see things that we don't have time to do. I hear everybody's overworked, and so I want to figure out how to take some of that off of you. Because I don't want to hear about people working 70 hours a week over and over again. And I hear about that from everybody in the room.
So one person has given their opinion on this board. How does the rest feel about their opinions on this board? Because one person does not speak for the board. That's how you feel about this.
What's this of which you
Board
speak?
here with these type of things. I mean,
Honestly, this is the third or fourth time we've brought something to the board and we've said, we really need to address this. We should look at it in X number of months, and then it doesn't come back up on the agenda without a lot of push, so I'm concerned about that. So I want to know kind of how we're going to hold ourselves accountable to readdress it and say, where do we stand? And how the board is going to look at what could be done, not in departments, but sort of across the support we need for running the town across the board, as it were. So I want to be sure that that is part of the discussion, and I'm a bit concerned that this will be something that doesn't, takes a lot of push to get back on the agenda.
well, when you say we, I don't know what the we is, because the department heads are doing, as everyone has said, a very good job. So is it a concern of the town board? Because once again, I think Griff pretty well hit the nail on the head.
I think that there are things that we, as a town board, could be doing much better and much more efficiently, i.e. using guys' time. And I think that the town board needs to be thought of as one of these departments when we talk about all the departments that need support.
So we also should provide a list.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think we need a list from
That's what you're
this
saying.
body,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Maybe have a work session.
Right, because it's got to be. Yep.
Because one of the huge variables here, I think, for the department heads is, we know what our job responsibilities are. The huge variable is how much will the town board give us to do,
Yep,
right?
That's
That's
exactly right.
where we get overwhelmed.
yep,
That's where
precisely.
He said it, so I'll build on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we fall behind.
Right.
You
Mhm.
come to us with special projects, special interests, special things, and unlike most government, you all move pretty quickly, which is nice for a lot of people. And it's also a detriment because we don't necessarily have time to take those on.
Exactly.
And we get caught up in those, and we get behind with our normal day
Right.
and the day-to-day routines of what we need to get done.
Right.
So then we're constantly scrambling to get those things done.
Right. And
Because
that's,
of all these little special interests that aren't on the plan.
That kind of come to fruition at certain times that are, because they come up. I mean, and you guys are proactive and ask us to get on them, which is
Well,
fine.
like purchase of some property.
Correct.
How much time did that take?
That took several hours for
Yeah.
me, guys, I mean, there was multiple employees involved in that.
I think that is an example of what's going on here too. Is that we have these interests and all of a sudden it pulls away from the work they're doing. Rather than
exactly.
respect them and let them do their job, we pull these other things in because, the problem with a dynamic board is it's dynamic. Sometimes you have to be careful and stay within the lane.
But sometimes it would be better for you all to have a work session, discuss it amongst yourselves, and come to an answer before you bring it to us, and that would make our life a lot easier.
Okay.
That, I think, is a great idea, because then we can filter out what we think, because we did that at the end of the discussion, and she probably should have talked about it at the beginning of the discussion of a certain item, and then said, let's move on.
I need this discussion that lasted an hour and a half
Right.
almost, yes.
So is this something that we put in the budget when we're looking at the next year because we think we may do something about it or not? It just, I keep asking that. What's your thinking, Mary Ellen?
My thinking is, how can you put something in the budget that you don't know what it is yet?
Okay.
If you decide to do that, is it something that cannot come out of fund balance?
So if we put it in the budget, then we couldn't take it out of fund balance? Is that what you're saying?
No, you can't, only if
No,
they,
is that what you're
If
saying?
you all decide that a position is needed, could that come out of fund balance, or is that not allowed?
No, it could, because we've created things before, like, for instance, the incentive program to retire, that came out of fund balance. You see all these other fund balances. But the question will be, which fund balances it comes out and what percent?
Right.
Because that's the other things you analyze. Okay, does this come out of the B fund if it's code and planning? Does it come out of the DB fund if it's road maintenance? Does it come out of the DA fund if it's snow removal? Does it come out of the A fund or the general fund? What percent comes out of that from each one if you want to do this? But those are things you have to do first. Do you have enough in there?
that's
It
a big,
depends also on how much you want to take out.
that's the big question is, yeah.
Well, and once again, I think we're having great discussion here. We're not at no, but it's like, where do we get the yes, and how much, is this going to be a part-time thing? I don't know. Is it going to be a full-time thing? I don't know. What is the job description going to be? It's awful hard to take people's money and to spend it on something you don't know what you're going to spend it on. To paraphrase you, and once again, I will never say it's only, because it's so disrespectful to people who have to work hard, because, quite frankly, we have the power to take their money. And if they don't pay their taxes in 3 years, they'll lose their house. And here we are. That is a tremendous amount of power that has been given to us, and I cringe sometimes with that amount of power because I am so respectful of that. So I think, to do our due diligence, we should do this first, and review this later on in the year and/or during budget season next year. I've done that before with the planner. I've done that before with a second planner. I've done that before with an additional code officer or safety inspector. I've done that before when we went from 2 full-time to 4 full-time in the rec department, amongst others. But it, thank you. But it takes time to be able to defend it to the people who are paying for it.
So what I hear is that it does not make sense, even if we think we will be spending the money, to put it in the budget because we don't have enough detail. Because, you know, like my background is in making other kinds of budgets where I don't need that level of detail. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to spend this, so I should budget for it. And you're saying in this case, in this type of budget, that even if we think we'll be spending it, we actually shouldn't put it in the budget because we don't know the details enough yet.
Right.
Okay.
Right, because of the way government works.
Exactly. That's just what I've been trying to get at for a while now.
It's okay, we have to work through it.
Is that something folks are comfortable with if we look at it and we don't put it in the budget for these reasons? Is that?
Right, but we're going to come back to this probably in at least December with like a general overview from some, if not all, of the department heads. And then what I'm also hearing is we have to look amongst ourselves.
Yes.
So we should set some time aside, maybe our next work session, to talk about us.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
I don't want to put super pressure on them.
No.
No, that's why I asked him how long.
Right, yeah.
No.
And if it turns out it's not going to happen in December, just let us know and we'll be like, I
That's
won't do
okay.
it then. Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah, for sure.
No.
Good point.
Especially with COVID out there still. Shuts down your apartment for a week, that doesn't happen, right?
No, I understand. These are soft deadlines. These are not hard deadlines. But if we don't start saying we're going to do this
On this month.
on that time, then it gets pushed off to next December. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Are we in agreement not to put this in now?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm comfortable
All
with
right,
that.
are there any other comments or questions to the budget?
Well, I actually would like to talk about the fund balance projections because I'm kind of concerned at the projections for the DA fund. I have some concerns about some of the others, but that one is particularly concerning. And where are we going and how are we going to not get to this projection?
Well, it's an estimate,
I understand that.
and if Mother Nature is kind to us, it may not be a negative, but we have money, if that projection is correct, we have money in the A to move it over. Once again, not to repeat myself again, but this is one reason why we're concerned about the fund balances to do these things. This is another reason why we're not using any fund balance in the budget.
Well, I understand, but
I'm addressing your
mhm.
your questions. This is where we are. Once again, when we went through the analysis, we had 175,000 more in the DA that came out for this snow removal for the first 9 months. That's not a criticism towards Mikey because he's doing the best he can. Mother Nature, though, has a bad attitude. Having said that, we don't know what's going to happen this next 3 months. We may bleed that down because right now, when you look at the supervisor report, there is no money in there for snow plowing. So you're going to have to come back. Let's get this right out in front with another budget mod request. And do you have a guesstimate of how much that would be?
Mary Ellen and I said maybe around 70,000.
It's in the budget line.
I was going to say, I thought we had a 50,000 or something in the budget mods.
Everybody got their rosaries.
There's,
Literally, I mean, it's just, you're very conscious, and the thing is, if it's 30 degrees, it's just as problematic as if it's 10 below and 3 feet, because people will be slipping and sliding all over the place.
no, we've got 70,000 in the budget modifications in this, today's agenda. Well, looking at our fund balance, I looked at our fund balance policy, and it's the A fund should be at 947,000, and we're projected at 322. It says the B fund should be at 120,000, and we're projected at 673. So there's a real difference there as to where there's an excess. DA, we're supposed to be at 630, and we're projected in negative 178. And our highway DB, we're projected to be at 804, and we should be at 660. So that's at least in the ballpark is what I would feel. But we're way off of what our fund balance policy says we should be. And my question is, how do we get a roadmap back to where our fund balance policy says we should be?
Well, the first thing you do is you don't use fund balance to balance the budget anymore. And this was something, as you remember, as you recall, I don't think Ruth was on the board then, we were trying to go to the ZBB, zero balanced budget. We've nudged that in that direction. The plague has accelerated this, right, and brought it right out there. If we maintain it at $1.79, we may be able to start building that back up, that extra 20 cents. We'll see where we are at the end. The B and DB is tricky. Once again, this is a policy, right? And this is something that the comptroller recommends between 3 and 6 months of fund balance that we do. Or it's not by law. The B and DB, we don't have a lot of control over with the sales tax, right? So rather than, and I'm not recommending we bleed that down, but if we're over 6 months on that, that's okay. Because, for instance, we have to let this play out with CJ. She has another part-time employee. We'll see where that balances out. Also, with Mikey, we'll see where that balances out also, in case we have to do more road maintenance, we'll see. So if those are healthy as far as I'm concerned, because those are things we don't have a function of taxing. Right? That is not out of our, that, because who's to say we don't go back to where it was 4.7, not the 15% we had 2 years ago? Who's to say we don't get another plate? So having said that, plus Mikey has the CHIPS money, he has other things that he's doing. Who's to say that doesn't get taken off the books in the future? We don't know. That was proposed at one time a few years ago. So the A and DA, this is another reason why I bumped up another 10 cents to be aggressive, to see where this plays out at the end. As we feel, and we'll have another discussion about that, probably maybe in January when all the bills are paid for 2022 and the money is collected. We still have to wait because they're usually 2 months behind with the sales tax. So it's probably going to be March before we really have an accurate discussion of the whole budget. I don't want to say closing the books, but basically that's almost what it is. But the B and the DB are healthy right now. Thank God people are buying stuff. The A and the DA is one of those things that if we have to bump it up again next year, we'll bump it up again next year if our fund balances are drastically low, because we use those as we had to when the plague hit for unforeseen expenses.
Well, I understand. I'm just looking at, between our A and our DA, there's not much margin left.
As I said, I think I explained it, but I'll go for a third time if you want.
Well,
the fact of the matter is that's why we went to no fund balance and we bumped it up 20 cents.
Is there anything we can start cutting back on now to try to say, well, maybe we shouldn't be buying and spending money on X, Y, and Z?
Well, X, Y, and Z are coming out of the ARPA money, which buys us time, right, for the equipment. And that's what it's there for. That gives us a pause until we start to move back, because that ARPA money is going to be gone in 2 years.
Right.
On that. So that gives us a pause if we do need equipment to do that. Maybe we take a hard look and say, do we need all this equipment? Once again, that's up to them to defend it. It's up to us to say if we need it, but the ARPA money is there for that. In the meantime, after 2 years, we'll have a pretty good snapshot. And if we have to raise it another 20 cents in next year to bring it up to speed, once again, it was $1.85 15 years ago. If you do 5% every year for your CPI, that's 75% more what it should be. You do the $1.85 times 75%, times 75% more. What's that? Another $100 something? That's over $3. I'm not proposing that. What I'm saying though is that is the roadmap back.
Right. Is the equipment, most of the equipment that we're buying for highways, is that going in DA or DB? Where's that money coming?
Depends on where it is.
Where's the big expenses?
There's really not big expenses this year. There's probably coming out of the water and sewer, Really, there's some money in there for him getting a vehicle, or her department getting a vehicle, because I was going to buy it, so, $180,000
And how much of that is ARPA able to cover? Because you're saying ARPA is going to cover some of this equipment costs.
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out where that ARPA money is saving us money. Is it saving us money in the DA or the DB fund?
It depends on where it is. I mean, a snowplow truck, DA pays for it, right? DB pays your part. SW water pays your part.
So you run it through. Is it even between DA and DB when you buy a snowplow truck, or is it?
It can be split 3 ways.
Yeah, but what's the percentage, roughly? Just ballpark.
33%?
Is it 33? Okay, okay.
It depends on what we're buying and how, and what's paying for it, right?
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to see where that ARPA money is going to give some relief in our fund balances, because I'm concerned about the A and DA fund balances because they're lower than they really ought to be, and,
We're going to, once again.
yep, I got that.
That's the doomsday estimate.
I know,
Those
but,
are estimates that are really, really rough. When I say rough, I mean, this is the worst-case scenario. We'll see where it goes.
I got
We've
that.
already got 80,000 coming back from the mortgage tax. Okay, that wasn't in there.
that's going into A or DA.
That'll go into A.
Okay,
So you bumped that by 80,000 already. As I said before many times, you gotta let the budget come to you. It's a mean dance if you try to control it, because there's a lot of things out there, it's guesstimates. It's guesstimates, and we have to be flexible. That's why we did this when we did with the big trucks. We saw where the use was, and we spread it out, which is a radical change from what it was before.
we got to be flexible. We also need to look at the future and say, do we need to change now so that we don't hit this crash point? Because I don't want to hit this crash point. I don't want to be down to where we've got 100,000 in our A fund, DA fund, fund balance, and that's going to cut us close. That's too close.
I have taken brutal steps already. At 20 cents, no fund balance, at 20 cents, that is almost historic to move that forward. So these are brutal steps going forward. So you say you need to do steps, they are done. If you pass the budget, they'll start being implemented.
Yeah, but this is this year that we're going to run out of money, not next year.
So these are the projections for the end of the year.
Right, that doesn't, next year's increase doesn't fix this year's deficit.
That's, if there is a deficit, we'll have to move some over, like you said, 70,000.
We're already moving 70 into it. That's in today's agenda.
You're going to have to wait for the next 3 months to see how it plays out.
I'm concerned about it. I'm not sure that waiting is the proper approach when you're told
Well,
we could run that close.
you have no choice, Joe. You have to be patient, you have to wait it out, and you have to see what the indicators are. Simple as that. And every month, it'll come in, we'll see where we are. Unless you want to have everyone stop buying stuff.
Well, that's the question. Is there stuff that we should, hold off buying because we're running this close? And I don't know if there's things right now that are anticipated to be purchased towards the end of the year that we could put off to next year because we're running really close for this year. I guess that's a question for Mikey. Is there anything that could be put off purchasing this year to next year so that...
It depends on how far do we want to get. I think we're good on salt. I'm not good on money to pay people to go out and plow snow. I'm not at all. What was on there? I'm hurting. I came to you and asked for more money just to get through what I figured was going to be in the spring, right? 100,000. So I'm good there. I'm good on blades. I'm good on salt. It's really, what is Mother Nature going to do? Are we going to get multiple ice storms? Are we going to get snowstorms? And I can't predict that. So that's kind of wait and see. We have fuel costs in there. That's the EPA. So I'll cover that. I'll try my best.
I'm talking capital.
The best I can. And again, it's going to be one of the other fuel costs have shot up on me too. So, So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I'm holding off. I don't need to purchase anything more for the plow trucks, hopefully. I'm good on blades, like I said, I'm good on salt. You're really not going to save much there on a couple blades here and there. The salt's expensive.
Right, I mean, we're talking capital costs because, obviously we're going to go out there and plow the roads because that's a necessity and we'll find the money somewhere. But, is there capital cost that could be switched to next year?
Yeah, I'm not purchasing anything else
Okay.
out of those funds. Equipment wise.
The plague is unpredictable. We didn't know you'd have 30% or whatever increase in gas or fuel, 30% over on materials or anything else. That's why this fund balance is here. That's the safety net. Now we take into the action plan to build it back up. And this will implement it. And then if we have to make more adjustments next year, we will with the next budget. We have to have a separate line for fund balance increase, we will. We'll see where this plays out right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be patient with this. This is where experience comes in. This is my 11th budget. We're going to be okay. It just has to take some adjustments, which we've already made as far as next year goes. We can't do anything about these projections, but once again, they're only projections as far as this goes. We'll see where the rest of it goes. We'll see if the court has a trial or not. That's $4,000. There's like $8,000 in there. Maybe they don't. That gets collapsed back in. These are all variables that we have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
There is no solving of this tonight. We just have to let it play out. That's where experience comes from. And we're going to be okay. In fact, okay will be a downgrade. We are going to be as usual. Even when we lost the power plant, even though we lost the biggest asset in town, we still chug ahead and we prosper. We adjust, we adapt, and we succeed. That's why I have all-stars at every different department, including the people that are under them. Otherwise, we would not have hired them. They are exceptional.
Speaking of the power plant, my understanding is we get money in lieu of the power plant closing down. How does that process work, and are we getting it, and when does it come into our coffers, and how?
That is the cessation one that we get crumbs back. And
Defer to Mary Ellen. I'm going to have to get back to you.
it's not a lot of money.
I'll take what I can get.
Well, so do we. But no, it's one of those things that, because as we all know, that the power company went from a pilot down to assessed value. I believe it was, at one point they had two parcels. One is 1.5 million and one is 500,000. So now that went from 233 million about 15 years ago down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
I dare any other municipality to take a hit like that, and how our schools are exceptional and everything else is exceptional, and we chug along.
Mm-hmm.
And if they resent me, I will wear that like a badge of honor.
Can we proceed?
Yes, can we proceed? The sun, I think you see the sun start to come up here. Any other questions?
I do have one question. On
Sure.
this list that we got of the budget highlights, maybe I misunderstood what's happening here, but it does say fund balance used, like for the DB fund, 369,000, as well as for the other funds, but the DB fund is the one that concerns me. What does that mean, then, the fund balance used, 369?
Where are you?
It's on this budget, 2023 budget highlights.
It's on the back.
Okay, so Charmaine, you want to explain
Number
this, or
4.
Mary Ellen?
When we figured out how much sales tax we wanted to use for you, we took what the budget was for this year, added 5%. And we put the total amount that fund balance that B needed, because B and DB work together.
Right.
So they both are the sales tax revenue funds. And so I put it in, and so that because B has a lower fund balance, I just put what they needed into the B and then the balance into DB. And after that sales tax amount is in there and all the other figures are in there, that's what's needed to balance it. But also DB has a really high fund balance, so they're.
She's taking it from this one.
Right, I know, but I misunderstood, maybe I misunderstood what you said. I thought you were going to say we weren't taking from the fund balance.
We're taking the fund balance from the A and the DA, because that drives the tax.
Oh, okay, gotcha, sorry. Thank you.
There's a lot of moving parts here. Once again, after 11 years, I still learn every year.
Just for the public's understanding, we're not talking about a budget, we're talking about 15 different budgets.
You could make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You could make that argument, absolutely. And they're all moving parts.
Yeah, and they all kind of work with each other, you know, especially when you get into the water district using equipment from the highway department. So it's a real back and forth that.
Well, and there's also the tax liability for everybody who's in a district.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever. So, any other questions?
No, that was it, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Good discussion. Okay, where are we here now?
Number 6.
Number
Just
6,
saying, guys.
Resolution memorializing changes to tenant budget and authorizing preparation of final preliminary budget. Stephen, drive carefully, my friend.
Thank you.
I'll move it.
I'll second. I don't want to ask, but I will. Any further discussion?
Are you inviting it?
I'm always, I mean,
There's a lot for punishment there, Ed.
if not, Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Ruth Goff.
Yes.
Ron Malosi.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Edwin Levine.
Yes. Moving on. Number 8, department reports.
The only thing I was going to add for the community library report was that,
Thank you, Charmaine.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
because there's a plan to put an addition onto the library, Susie's very active in applying for grants, and she is applying for some ARPA money through the Tompkins County Legislature, and I hope it comes through.
I think it'd be money well spent.
What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing again, I'm sorry.
Making paper airplanes over there?
Would it be,
I look better without my hat.
would it be feasible for the town board to write a letter of recommendation to the county?
She asked me to do that today, and I quickly did one. I don't know if it's okay, because I was looking at my phone.
Did you send it in already?
I sent it to her, to Susie.
Okay.
She's the one that's going to send it in. But it
So
says
you-
it's,
Should the board sign it?
Well, it's-
As such?
I don't, maybe, I don't know. I said, is this okay? Is this what you wanted? Because I'm the liaison to the library.
So speaking it for the town board, you would
Yes,
like, you
yes.
would like us to make a
That's what I-
motion to do this so that you are not overstepped? I know.
Do we need to motion it, or can we just agree?
Let's see what she says.
Okay. Well, do we support this?
Yeah.
So I guess we're all in agreement that we.
I missed it because of the guy and,
We support a letter of recommendation from
You
the
don't
town
get money.
board to the county, for the county to designate ARPA money for the part of the addition of the library.
oh, yeah, okay.
So you have it.
Okay, thank you.
You're good.
You see I didn't have a
Anything else?
motion there?
No. Lansing Youth Services did not meet. They meet tomorrow night.
Okay.
Mike Ziegler's not here.
Keep going.
Take the
Keep
wheel,
going.
Andrew.
Keep going.
Mikey,
Keep
okay,
going.
Mikey.
We'll get this thing through by 9.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is just reports.
Yeah. Hiring report?
Are you going to add more to it?
I just want to make something clear, just really quick. You know, I do not negotiate for the Highway Association.
Right.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
right, you know, I believe they
I
asked that.
misunderstood. My mistake.
Whatever the rest of the employees got, they got, I think is what it was. You know, on behalf of myself and the secretary and my deputy is what I had asked for.
I'm sorry, you were making reference to your employees, not the
Not
not the association
Right,
employees.
right. So, and again, you guys control the purse strings and how you want to go about the percentages of increase in pay, and that's your decision, not mine, for all the departments. With that said, my report is before you, and any questions, I'm happy to answer.
You gonna be able to finish all the paving before the weather turns on you too much?
We have some patchwork left. I did some shimming on some roads that I really thought needed it, and I'm actually happy that I got the section of Buck Road with the detour. Just getting some more traffic there going up to Benoit, so.
How much did Blacktop go up this year?
Well, $102 a ton, you know.
As opposed
out of
to-
Lansing, you know, $74 a ton last year, you know.
Third?
Yeah.
Again? And you still got a lot done.
We did. Thank you.
Well, thank you, board members, for giving them that money for it, or whatever you had to do.
One thing, the guys did, the crew did a great job cleaning up village brush. Mr. Courtney said the crew was professional and did a fantastic job and very efficient. So hats off to the guys for doing a great job.
Perfect.
Cool.
Excellent. Great, Debbie, keep going.
Parks and Rec,
Push the pile.
I'm just going to do a department.
That's it. Push the pile. Go.
I just want to say thank you again to the veterans. Mike, that was here tonight. I really appreciate that. It's a great organization. They do great work. So I'm glad we can host the watch fire and hope to continue that. May or may not happen, but we're pushing them to keep going. So we'll see what happens.
You do a lot of extra stuff.
A couple things, yeah.
Like
Put that on your list.
Extra
Yeah.
stuff.
No, we do a lot of, and I think that's what makes Lansing unique. We do a lot of extra stuff, not just check the box, that's it, get back to us next year when we have more money. I really appreciate that, because when you took hold of that fundraiser for those 6 different events, whatever was down there, it was exceptional. You brought the community together. With the trunks and treats, I know I misspoke.
Yeah. Trunk and treat, yes.
I got it right this
It's
time?
on-
Thank you.
Well, close, but it's on Halloween, yes. Another great event at the park.
Good, good.
Any
Thank
word
you.
on the contract
For
for the Myers Park project?
No, we had that discussion today.
Yeah, we just talked about
To be continued.
History.
Stay tuned.
Yes, I want to say thank you to all of you. Great communication this week. I wish it would have been sooner, but I really appreciate the communication with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm calling tomorrow. Okay.
Careful what you wish for.
I was going to text. I'm on the phone. Okay, whatever you think. Go ahead, next.
Engineer report, he's not here. Director of Planning. Yes.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen of the board.
I will spare you the details of the report. Were there any specific questions that you had?
No, we look forward to your recommendations.
How's the open space survey going? Are you getting enough responses?
I actually don't know, and Steve was just here, I probably should have asked him. Bergman Associates, of course, is also working on the open space index for the town. But I do want to report, thanks to Jenna from Parks, we are able to circulate the request for the surveys to the Lansing Central School District listserv, which, as I understand it, is pretty remarkable way to circulate information in the town. It's also posted on the website as well, and was a press release went out about it. So I'm not sure how many surveys have been collected, but my understanding is that the Conservation Advisory Council has decided to keep the survey open through, and perhaps Andrew could speak better to this, but I think it was November 30th. So we encourage people to complete the survey, and looking forward to hearing from them.
And they can go on the town website. Anyone who's listening can go on the town website, is my understanding. And
I will double check and make sure that was posted there, but I believe so. Let me double check for you. Oh, maybe it's not on the website yet. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
But it definitely went out in a press release. It definitely went on a Lansing discussion listserv, and it definitely went on the LCSD listserv. And we're also planning, we're hoping them with a postcard mailing about the survey as well.
Okay.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Sandra.
Now, wow, we can do the consent agenda, but then you're going to take over.
Okay, so, I'll take the baton. Mrs. Munson will walk us through this. We have 4 of them on here, and each of you can take one, starting with Andrea, Bronwyn, Ruth, and Joe. I want to share it so you don't.
Okay, the first one is a motion scheduling public hearing for proposed highway building project.
Resolution scheduling public hearing for special districts proposed 2023 budgets.
Resolution scheduling public hearing for the town of Lansing preliminary budget for 2023.
Resolution approving audit and budget modifications and supervisor's report. And I will move the consent agenda,
I'll second.
but I would like to ask a couple of questions about the budget modifications. And I do this because we got it about an hour before the meeting, and so I haven't had time. And I,
What, wait, this isn't a consent agenda. You should.
well, if we get the items an hour before the meeting, we don't have time to talk about and ask. I just want to know a little bit
I
more.
have no problem, Joe, but you should have asked to pull it out at the start of the meeting. but-
Yeah, but I think that just makes it harder for Debbie to like pull things in and out.
Okay, we won't follow procedure. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'm seeing a bunch of money going into playground fields and youth contractual programs. I'm just wondering what happened and why we need to put money there.
Again, it's just the cost of everything has gone astronomical, and some of that stuff has gone for us 300%. It's just nuts.
Wow.
I mean, I'd love to control that better, but it is what it is. I mean, I still want to offer the program, so I'm kind of torn, because I do want to save money, but I also want to offer the program for the children, so.
Are we thinking of refiguring the fees for next year based on these changes?
I'm trying to tweak some things and possibly use some different vendors for things that hopefully will be cheaper next year, but, yeah, I mean, I tweaked some of the numbers a little bit for next year.
But costs are going up. I got that. I understand.
Unfortunately.
Okay. That was the ones that I didn't quite understand. I just wanted to get a little bit more on that. Thank you. Did we get a second on the,
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Ruth seconded.
okay.
No,
Oh, sorry.
it shouldn't be, it's a consent agenda, so.
I know, but I thought I heard Jill say there was another question.
No, I said that was what I wanted to get a little bit more information on.
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Ruth Ross,
Yes.
Brian Wilson.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Board member reports. Andrea?
I talked about those too, and unfortunately, my internet didn't work, so I wasn't attending the last CAC.
Okay. Ruth?
Mine's in the packet.
Yeah.
Okay, Rowan?
I wasn't able to attend a couple of meetings, but the NYSERDA grant I'm submitting tomorrow, finally, so
Excellent.
that's it.
Joe?
Mine's in the report if anyone has any questions.
Okay. Ed? All right. Air Service Board, God bless them. The Air Service Board, they're scrambling, they're working their tails off, trying to find a third carrier, trying to get this airport, moving in the other direction. There's no danger of it going under. That's the 20-year, I asked them that. I said, they'll probably ask for more help from the county. I asked them, I said, are they paying their bills and everything? Because now the business part of me kicks in. They said yes. I said, is this thing going to go away? They said, no, there's a process that goes through it. It takes about 20 years. So no, the airport's not going to go away.
What happens if it can't pay the bills?
Well, they'll find the money someplace, or the county will, or something will happen. But when you decommission an airport, it isn't like put the chain on, lost the lease. There is a whole process to go through. And this is strategically in a certain spot, and there are a lot of people interested. So once again, the game plan is to hang on, get through it, and the light is not another train coming at you, okay? I mean, that is what it is. That's what the game plan is. There's two carriers that are there that want to be more aggressive. And there are other carriers out there that are looking for a hub. So it isn't all doom and gloom. And Josh Nally and the rest of them, they're out in Vegas at this conference where it's like the meet and greet, here we are. And they have a lot of leads. We'll see if there's any fruit. So they're doing well. And before the pandemic, they were very solid. And American's gone. And we didn't know if American was actually had that intent anyways. That's hard to tell. Sometimes these things are, companies' actions, I'll say this generically, companies' actions sometimes are accelerated when there are economic crisis, so we say, right? And they downsize faster than what they intended, and they kind of use that as an excuse, so to speak. Not that everybody does that, but there's some. Yeah. So anyways, so we are open for business, and it's still a beautiful airport, and I'm sure 5 years from now, it'll be the other way, right? And the birds will sing a little louder, and the sun will be a little brighter. So once again, they are like we are. We're like turtles. You hunker down, and we'll get through it. That's all for now. Work session, we're going to talk about the Bell Station acquisition, Finger Lake Land Trust, blah, blah, blah. Anybody want to talk about that?
I still have the same question of what's the line on the map moving outside the section that the land trust purchased you know, is the part of the NICEAG property being a part of this? That was my question last month.
And you can ask Guy this time.
We can let that
You're allowed to ask Guy this time. Because he's here. Or CJ, or whoever else has an answer.
I don't know who has the answer. I'm looking at a map that shows,
I didn't know I should be.
No,
I don't know, I asked it,
There's no action being taken.
right.
yeah, I don't have an objection to DEC buying it, I'm just not understanding why that line's outside of what the land trust purchased.
So if we're going through the action plan that we talked about, and board members are being more involved, Joe, who do you have to call to find out?
I don't know.
Andy's up.
Okay, so Joe, who
I
do you
will,
call?
I will talk to Andy.
Anything else? Okay, check the box. Next, we're RA zoning district update.
You have to, I think, respond by a certain date.
I think it's if we have a problem, we have to respond.
Do we have to respond, or do we have to not
I don't know, I didn't read the whole thing, but the last paragraph, last sentence, one of the paragraphs says the law allots 90 days from the receipt of this letter for reply. So by November 22nd, you need to.
I think we only need to reply if we object.
It says, "The town where the land is located must be offered the opportunity to object to the acquisition."
Okay.
This letter is intended to offer that opportunity, so.
Excellent research, board members. That's what I like to know, see? Dig it out.
So may I ask a question then?
Absolutely.
Should this go on for the November to discuss again, or the
No.
board's okay with it, or we don't need to discuss?
We're good.
Or just trying to follow
Yeah.
through here?
I'm good.
We're good.
Just double check with Guy that we're reading that correctly, and we can ignore this if we don't object.
That's what it says.
I just want to make sure our attorney agrees with us.
Well, okay, I guess you ask him now, don't ask him later.
I am.
I was looking at this map and trying to line it up with the tax parcels numbers, and that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm assessment, trying to figure out where the tax parcel numbers are.
That's the yellow line.
I don't know. Well, I understand that, but
I've double checked that already. I've double checked that. I've double checked that,
why
Guy.
the lines are where they are, I don't know. Maybe the land trust owns the adjoining parcel and is giving more. I have no idea.
That, no. But the question to you is, if we just ignore this, we're fine. That's just saying we're agreeing that the DEC can purchase this. Correct?
Correct. Under the way the fund that they're using requires that if they're going to use statewide funds to purchase property in a municipality, that particular grant fund says the municipality has to be given an opportunity to object or express concerns. If you support it, or you don't want to object, or you don't have concerns, then you don't have to reply at all. You can also send a letter saying, we think this is great, please move faster. It's up to you guys.
I would move now to just say, let's send a letter saying we think this is great.
Okay, Joe, compose it. Right,
Sure.
board members are doing more actions, compose it, send it to us. We can do it by our next meeting,
Okay,
okay?
Sure.
Put it on a letterhead, or we'll just say town board, put it on a letterhead.
I think you'll sign it, but sure, I'll draft a
Or
letter.
send it to us. Just send it to us so we can agree to it
Yeah,
via
Yeah,
email.
we don't need
Yeah,
to.
I'll
Send
send,
a motion.
yeah, I'll send the letter, right?
Good.
You got it.
All right,
So it'll go on next month's agenda to approve the letter?
I don't know that we have to. We haven't, like the night,
Well, I don't
our
know.
consensus, we're fine.
Guy, is that okay?
Yeah, if the board wants to empower you to write a letter on behalf of the board to support the project, I think you can do it.
Okay. I think Ed signs it though as supervisor. I think that's, in the end, the way it should be.
Well, you can say on behalf of the town board.
On behalf of the town board, yeah. Okay. I'll do that. I'll get that out in the next few days.
Anything else for that one?
Nope.
Rural Ag Zoning District update?
Thank you. So in your packet, you should have received a draft of the rural agriculture and ag, new agriculture zoning district. As you know, this was directed by this board back in February to take on essentially a very long-standing project in the town, which is the primary goal of the town's agricultural and farmland protection plan, which was developed, I think, beginning in 2009, I want to say, and finally adopted in 2015, as well as some of the primary goals in the town's 2018 comprehensive plan as well. So this is the initial take review. I'm hoping for you to be able to read it and dig into the material. So feel free to email or call with any questions whatsoever about them. All the materials are posted to the website as well, and the department's webpage. I've actually looked and confirmed that it's there. I don't know how this is in any event. All the RA and ag zone materials are there that are in front of you, as well as some brief information about the project, as well as a link that people can click on to email me directly. So every couple weeks, what I'll do is aggregate all the comments that we receive from the public on them and put them into a document, send them along to you so that you can easily review them. We'd like to have an open house sometime. November is tricky because we have Veterans Day and the first day of hunting season, and then we also have Thanksgiving, of course. So it's a little tricky to have an open house, at least on the weekend. So I'm certainly open to feedback or whether you would want that, whether you prefer a different public outreach approach. But in any event, this was the recommendation of the Code Revision Committee, whom we tasked to do this work, and we're really excited to be proposing it to you.
Is this on the web now?
Yes, it is. You can go to.
I mean, I was on the committee, so I don't really have a lot comfortable with it, but I'm open to ideas, because maybe there's something there I missed. So I'm glad that the public, please, the public,
Yes.
give us your input.
Lansing.com. You go to Department, Planning and Code Enforcement. The first link on the upper right is a dedicated page to the RA zoning district and map update. You can click on and you'll see all of the links to each one of the documents there.
So Patrick, could you put this on the LED sign also?
Just the link for the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can make a short link if you want to.
Yeah.
Please.
Like a bit.ly, that's maybe good for people driving.
Yeah, it's
Or can we put it on the stationary sign?
I mean, I can just say, check out the zoning and www.lansing.com.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to, so people,
And
right?
they should be able to navigate it from there, but maybe.
Yeah, it's very easy to get to. It's actually just one click. You would scroll to departments. And I can also put it on the main page if you want.
I wonder if we're going to put it there and have the Lansing.com, maybe having it on the main page would be good, so people don't have to dig around for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that until I had a chance to speak with you this
Yeah.
evening, but once you said, okay, let's begin to publicize this, I can click a button on the website and it makes it a news item, essentially.
Are we all in okay?
Yes.
Sounds good.
We okay? We're okay?
Really?
I guess it's good you're sitting
I
down.
feel judged.
Are
you okay?
I didn't mean it like that.
No, it's a new day, and
Disrespectful.
we're all empowered now, we're all going ahead, we don't need to call anybody, we're
So-
just making decisions.
No worries, okay?
I've got a question. Here it says the Code Revision Committee seeks confirmation of the following complementary policy directives. Is that seeks confirmation from the town board of the ... Like, what, other than looking at this thoroughly, what specifically is needed? What response?
Where are you reading?
Page 39.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, so I believe that was part of the questions that we had for this town board back on February 3rd.
Oh, I totally remember that.
No worries.
Okay.
This was us just trying to.
This is
kind
like
of
the
flesh out the
historical.
scope. And so
Cool.
we spoke about these a bit
Okay.
during the process, but, we didn't
Clearly.
establish specific design guidelines or standards. We did not consider density-based zoning to limit the total number of residential uses. We didn't talk a lot about existing uses the town would like to see removed, more as we, I think, largely focused on really clearly defining agricultural uses. That was really the primary goal of the project. I think we tried to hew pretty close to the ag plan. And then should ag uses be allowed in all districts, then yes, that was a main point of the focus. Obviously, there's other committee members are here who could, add to that characterization, but.
So we're going to move forward with some kind of public open house session on this? I think that would be really good, considering it's 60% of the town we're talking about rezoning.
That's the only challenge really, is the dates in November coming up. But if I think the 5th would work reasonably well. November 5th, if you're comfortable with that, as well as December 3rd. Either of those.
Can you do both?
2 open houses?
Yeah.
Is that asking more than you have time for?
Okay, and that actually begs a.
That just violate what we just talked about.
No, you see, I'm asking.
I'm sorry. Old habits are hard to break as far as this goes. Let's go one in November then.
I'm asking CJ, is that more than you can handle?
Well, okay, so let's back up if I could just a moment, because Deb's laughing because she came in with this question. Should we assume that all of you would want to attend those open houses?
Then we have a thing.
Event, if you all want to attend, do we need to then post that, each of those open houses as a public meeting?
It would.
I think we need to do it for,
So I'm seeing council nodding, so.
not only for us, but for the planning board as well.
If they're
And
going.
then we need to have people there to take minutes.
I mean, I have to check my calendars honestly, because I don't know, I don't know.
So I was thinking a Saturday morning.
The bed calls me. I don't know, I have some things.
Well, what we could also do is just say, all right, if we're having 2 of them, 2 or 3 of us can show up to one, 2 of us can show up to one, 2 of us can show up to one, 2 of us can show up to the other, and somebody can bow out and say, I'm going to miss this for whatever reason.
And we'd have to have the planning board do a similar not
Split
pick
that.
quorum.
Yeah.
You just open it to the public. So, I mean, if the members are here, as long as they're not talking amongst themselves.
Well, let's ask Guy. How can we?
Well,
Could we talk to people, but not each other?
Didn't you just say you weren't going to ask me stuff? I think I want to check with COOG really quickly on that, because I think if the format is it's open to the public and you're attending as a member of the public,
right,
and you're not engaging in conducting town business, then it may not be a meeting. But if you're there as a board and people can come and ask you questions about it, whether you're responding individually or at a board, I think it's different. This isn't a training session, but there are some exceptions for this type of thing. And off the top of my head, I've never actually had this come up, so I'd like to check with them and then give you an answer tomorrow.
Yeah,
Sounds
'cause
good.
I'd like to be able to answer questions.
Do the board members have to be in attendance?
If it's not a meeting, no.
Maybe we don't just show up. We just leave it to whoever has the open house here, who will be who? CJ, is that the one that would hold the open house?
Yes, that's correct.
Or we could rotate, we could also, if the open house is X long, if folks wanted to come, we could be like, I'll go for this time, and just make sure we aren't all here the whole time or something, could be another option.
Well, I mean, who would be asking all these questions? It'd be the public asking to who? You need to have a focal point.
Yes, exactly.
And their focal point should be CJ, so that we don't have lobbying, the perception of lobbying or whatever. I think that's why we would be totally objective if we stay away. And if they have questions, we're going to have obviously, we're going to have a public hearing on this, I'm sure. And they can come, and they can also do it through emails to your department, and we do share them with us. And, I mean, so it's not like they're not going to have communications. But I think that the forum would be more objective if we have just CJ here presenting, here are these numbers, here they are. Then if they want to reach out to us, they can come to the board meeting or they can send an email to you.
Well, CJ, what would you prefer?
So, you know, this is a really good question. Just to step back a moment, you know, an open house is meant to be essentially a kind of a casual way for the public to interact with something that can be kind of complex. So, for instance, we recently had one on the highway department building where people could actually come and, you know, see the building and interact with staff and, you know, get anything for the project. So in this instance, what we would do is we'd arrange the tables in such a manner to have, you know, small easels. We'd have foam core backing. We print the maps, plotter print size, so people could really, you know, dig into the maps. If they wish to, we'd probably set up our GIS. Also, we'd probably bring the computer in here and hook it up to the screen so that people could zoom around and we could show them digitally also rather than just have a, you know, static map. We'd be a little more dynamic. Then it'd also print at least 3, maybe even more full copies and binders of each of the printed material so that folks could sit with the material, read it through as carefully as they wanted to, and then I would be available to answer questions about any particular section. We'd also probably print a few poster size of like the highlights of the changes. Just, you know, if somebody just wanted to come quickly for 15 minutes, walk around the room, look at the maps, what's the big deal, what's actually changing, we could just summarize that for them. So, you know, I'd say it really, you know, the two committee members with the most familiarity would be Ed and Joe, who I think could reasonably, you know, speak to the zoning as well or defer questions to me. That said, I like this Saturday morning deal because it's kind of informal. I can put some coffee out and some pastries and, you know, just have a way that people come and talk to me and meet us and, you know, just learn a little bit about zoning and, you know, be there.
Sounds cool.
I would advise to stay away from board members. I want it to be as objective as possible. And sometimes when you have a board member, it's the same thing when you have a board member come to a different meeting. That's not the liaison. There is that presence. Sometimes, you know, it's open to the public. But they have questions. Who's better qualified than CJ to answer those questions objectively? I think it gives us some distance so that they can look at them objectively. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know how the other board members feel, but if people are really concerned, they have the emails, they can send in the questions, or they can write the questions right there and you can absorb them. I mean, either way, you can maybe keep those questions for the rest of us to look at later.
Yeah, we've also done an easel with a pen as well, so that people could just like free write questions about it that were very open and that other people could also see as well. So, yeah, I could have a stack of, you know, for instance, Joe's business cards, or Ed's business cards as well as mine, yeah, I would really just see it as an informal way for people to come in and have a discussion. You know what, Lansing's got a really long history of zoning being a very politicized thing. And it could be a little sea change to just really treat it as, you know, another legislative, you know, update that's largely, you know, administered by, you know, planning and code.
I might guess my question is, if we got 30 people in here asking you questions, are you going to be overwhelmed? Because I think you had a pretty decent turnout to highlight.
You're good? Right.
Yeah, I like engaging with people, and sometimes that's an opportunity to, you know, speak with more than one person at a time. And, you know, hey, look, if there's a line of people, it's not all snowing.
You've done your job, right?
This isn't purgatory.
We had a lot of people to talk about a highway building. I'm really impressed with the turnout you were able to get to that. And so I'm expecting there to be a large number of people here. I wouldn't guess the number, but it's not going to be 3 people standing here.
Okay, and so that is my concern about the November 5th date, because John can't be there on November 5th. And I have been, you know, so to have that backup, and I have been cautioned about November 19th as kind of a de facto holiday of sorts. It's the first day of open deer hunting season.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, The 19th is a possibility,
So-
I just don't want to offend.
Another thought, and when we're looking at scheduling, we're talking about the library doing their thing, like, we could see if the library's doing anything, because it could be like like, if the library's got a thing happening, and be like, come over, oh, head over to the town hall, you know, if that makes sense to factor in, but there was an if at the beginning of that sentence. Yeah, sorry.
Well, let me ask a question. Ed suggested maybe doing two, and maybe doing one in the evening on a weekday and one on a morning on a Saturday, so you kind of cut that problem out of, you know, I'm busy Saturday mornings because I'm off, you know, on the first day of hunting season, but Thursday evening, 2 weeks before, is not a problem. And I'm asking you, is doing two of them putting too much of a burden on you?
No, because if I do one, I duplicate the process again. Like, the material's already prepared.
Mhm.
If I'm doing one, I just need to show up again for an additional 3 hours, and Heather can help me with setup. But
Right.
This is something that you feel strongly would really benefit the community, like a couple extra hours is not.
Well, I'm saying hunting if you do it on the first day of hunting season, that's a problem. If you do it on another day where people can choose which one they can go to, I don't think that creates as much of a problem. That might be my misunderstanding, but I think if you give people two choices, they decide which one they can make, as opposed to how dare you put one on my special day.
Yes, of course, so it sounds like I would coordinate with Bronwyn on the,
What?
sorry.
I'm like,
On the date of the library.
oh, no, I was just thinking, like, just check out what they're doing, see if it makes sense. That was all. Like, if there's something that's going to be a draw to the library, we might as well piggyback on it, or they can piggyback on ours. That's all. I have no idea about anything that's happening.
Okay.
Would it be a problem? I would like to just attend, just to see the presentation, you know? That wouldn't be a problem, would it? Okay.
As long as you defer your questions to CJ.
Yeah, like that.
Well, she doesn't have any answers.
That helps.
No, I just want to participate as a resident.
Yeah.
See.
You know, it was discussed by the committee, and I think we, wanted to also bring that to here. I know there's some strong sentiments on that. I'm fairly certain Joe would like us to do that. I have recently discovered that mailings in the town are more complex than I kind of originally understood. We do not have something called a bulk mailing permit.
What?
Right, but whoever you go to, they do use their bulk
Right.
permit.
Yes, we can, that's true, but it's a little bit of, shall we say, bureaucratic legwork, as it were.
Really?
Yes, I have to say, Chair of the Conservation Advisory Council, Carrie Miller, has been doing a lot of this legwork, and it's actually somewhat intricate for the town to get a bulk mailing permit. We apparently had one back in the day, but we don't, but we have to renew it. And so I wanted to find out more of that. But in any event, it costs approximately, and I would defer to Mikey, I think he did this most recently, but I think it's around $4,000 to mail the entire town.
Close to 3, I think, but someone needs to go to that list.
Yeah.
I'm not going to that list. We got a lot of returns.
Yeah.
People from Saskatchewan and New Jersey.
Not super interested?
And that,
Came from the board of elections.
Yes.
For people that were registered.
I wonder,
Okay. I would use the.
We just had a brief conversation about this before. I think you would get a better turnout if you like just inserted a flyer in the shopper or something like that.
and use the school too. You know.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the school.
Yeah, I mean, if we send
the
it-
flyer in the shopper makes sense.
That's gonna cover
I didn't even get a mailer about the highway.
I got four.
Yeah. Joe got 4. And I think if we were to do it, just sending it to resident rather than the person makes a lot more sense. So just each household gets it, because I get duplicates of all of these things and it's silly. And Joe gets 4.
Even when it said we're current resident, it was still returned.
Huh.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I wonder if this shopper idea, because everybody gets that.
A lot of people still read the shopper.
Or it falls out of it, especially if it's one of those like 8.5 by 11s you put in it, even if you don't read it.
Honestly, even if it was in the shopper, because when we first designed it was to take them out.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you could accidentally see it.
Right. Lansing residents.
The reason I was asking about that was because if you're talking about having this first weekend in November,
We should mail it
That's,
now.
like, right around the corner. I
Yeah.
don't see how you're going to get a mailing out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was my, I wasn't, that was what my curiosity was at the time.
That's a good point.
Getting it together.
Yeah, but I couldn't, I wanted to speak with you all first, have not seen the draft zoning. Wanted to make sure that you felt comfortable having something like that advertised. I didn't know how many people we were going to be talking to tonight, or, I didn't know. So I wanted to wait to speak to you.
I appreciate that, CJ.
Well, I think we were also talking about moving it to the 19th if she does a weekday as well, so that gives her more time. But I'm comfortable letting CJ do the publicity that she feels necessary to put this out. I think she should feel free to, put it out as widely as we can. This is a big chunk of the town, and we're doing some substantial changes, so I want the public to be told that this is happening. And I know, Ed, we're going to hear from somebody who said, you never told me. But we need to make a real effort to get it out there as much as we can. And I like putting it on the sign on the town hall. I like putting it on the first page.
So, in all honesty, a lot of people who this is really directly going to affect might not drive by the town hall often.
Yes.
I wonder, is there a way we could put up a big sign, like, on some of the main corners, like over by Linda's or something? I don't know, like, is that a possibility?
Well, it depends on what highway and, your line.
It's a state highway.
Right.
You're on a state highway.
Or, I mean, or even not big, maybe, like the little, like, check out the zoning changes or something, Does that does that seem like it would be a useful use of time and
Well, when you have a
energy?
Any way to inform the public. It is, any way that's
Right.
reasonable.
Yeah. Knock on every single door, maybe not, but, right.
So when you have a public hearing on this, would you send out a mailer to everyone affected within 600 feet of this, whatever?
No,
Do we need
would
that list
post
already?
It would go, once you set a public hearing, it's going to go in the news. It's not a specific action on a specific parcel, not
Okay.
discretionary use, so
Okay.
we wouldn't create a boundary around, one
Have we-
particular parcel and mail it, but.
Have we made a decision on what we're going to do here?
Well, CJ, what do you want from us?
What do I want from you all? Just wanted to understand any questions you had about the draft, whether you felt comfortable beginning to circulate it to the public. I didn't hear anything to the contrary. So I went ahead and assumed that that was good to go after about a week, after I had emailed you the draft. And then right now, it is now front page on the town website as we speak. It's now on sign. From you all, I think what I need is a good reading. Any questions back from you about any questions about how it might impact, anything, taxes, density, any questions you might have about what you think the impacts would be on town operations, those kinds of questions. And let me know if you want me to make some time to sit down with you and review any of it. We can block out some time to do that. And I did want to understand what kind of engagement you wanted, what kind of open, did you feel comfortable with the format that I described, becoming staffing, having being available to answer questions, really just kind of.
Oh my, it's like, that sounds very close. It is, okay.
So this is, just to understand, the public engagement, you understand what we, did we meet the goals that were articulated in the ag plan and the comp plan? And what more, if anything, would you like to see? What edits? Essentially, what would you like to see further? That's where it would be. And what dates you would prefer? That's, was my other question.
Well, it sounds like you want to move it off of the 5th because you want John there as well. So I think you need to work with your staff and find dates that work for everybody and do it.
Reply to you all.
Let us know.
Great idea.
Yep.
So if you'd be comfortable with an evening session sometime in November prior to your next meeting, it sounds like, perhaps the 10th might work well. And then you're comfortable with a Saturday morning session as
Sounds
well.
great.
And it sounds like you want the postcard mailing. It's, like I said, it's $4,000 to mail all of the town.
I think that it's such a huge change and affects so much of the town that we really ought to do a townwide mailing to just every way we can say, hey, we're doing something.
So we're concerned about fund balance, but now we're not concerned about fund balance.
Now, we're also talking about a fund.
I
And
do have funding in the consultant line because the consultant who reviewed this, you saw George Franz's comments. He
But
was
this is
very-
town-wide. It shouldn't be the A fund?
This is the town only. Obviously, it doesn't affect the village.
I don't know.
sorry.
I don't know. I mean, you guys decide.
Is the room available, Mrs. Munson?
Yeah.
On the 10th, Judge Howell does have pre-trials at 1 o'clock, so that usually goes longer, but in the evening, it should be cleared out.
The other possibility is the community center.
Sure. Move it out of
I
town.
don't know what their schedule is.
Yeah.
Do you want me to check that calendar?
I think you and CJ can work out times. I don't think
Do
we,
you want us tentatively put on here, CJ?
Does it
If
depend?
you're there, if you could, you willing to do that, thank you so much. Yeah, it might be nice to go to another venue as well.
I don't think there's as much kind of space to move around if you're
Feels
going to put up
different, yeah.
stuff.
It's a
over there.
small-
Do they have internet over there?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, but-
Does the library, does their
Library's
extended
smaller.
Wi-Fi? No, does their Wi-Fi
Outside.
extender
Oh, I
reach
don't
far
know.
enough to hit the community center?
I don't know, I know the Boy Scouts like to, one of their meetings like to meet in here because we do that a lot.
yeah, I think the community center has poor Wi-Fi. I guess another possibility would be for you to look at some of the fire halls and see whether you want to go there.
What Saturday we talked about for December?
I was thinking, well,
I think we should move it
I
out of
was
here.
looking at the 19th or the 3rd.
Of December or
The
November?
19th of November or the 3rd of
The 3rd of December, there's an artesian fair here all day.
Well, that would be bad.
would be conflicting with yours.
There's a what?
Artesian fair.
Community center is open.
But if you wanted to do that or something,
Mm.
you have this at Breeze, artesian fair at Breeze.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
But you wouldn't have her internet.
Space as well.
oh, yeah.
Parking lot.
We don't have to work out the dates right now.
Yeah.
You guys can work out the dates.
Yeah.
Will do,
don't
and then
need
what
the-
I'll do is reply to the thread that has the draft zoning
Awesome.
in it with the information about the dates. That sounds good. Thing is, again, still fuzzy on this postcard. You've allocated budget for this. So
Let's do it.
my understanding is that I can.
You can decide.
Budget, so
Okay.
Yep, hit it.
whatever the dates are, if it's far enough out to do the mailing.
Right.
Okay.
Understood. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We
Are there
done?
any questions?
I mean,
Are we done? Okay.
I have, not for her, I just one request. Could I have Mary Ellen send that organizational chart to each of the board members? That's all I
oh,
have.
yeah,
Thank
good
you.
call.
So, do we have to go to executive session? Shocking. Motion to exit.
I move it.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion?
We have this, do we have to do anything about this?
Ruth, were you
Oh, baby, are you so right?
We're gonna leave. Prints of ourselves running out the door.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Anyone opposed?
Were you opposing, guy?
Oh, no, I just said, really?